get done before that. So Paul, are you making the presentation, please? Are you turned on? I don't think your mic is turned on. There you go.
There we go. Paul Robeson with Appleton Partners. Yep, thank you. So, considering that we're on the consent agenda, we wanted to make sure that we addressed each of the comments from the board. So we're going to go through, we have a copy of the draft agenda. So we'd like to read each item and take you through that part of the set.
Very good.
Item number 1 says that MBAR will not support proposal to enclosure fence the private patios for all the bungalow units. This is going to be a common response to a few of these. We actually, the proposed work at the bungalows has been removed from the project scope. This is something we discussed at our previous hearing. We made that modification with the planning department, and we're here today with the focus being on the main building and the back of house. So bungalows are not in the scope of work in this presentation or in the planning case. Item 2, similar statement, consider reducing number of fenced bungalow patios. Again, that's been removed from the scope. The next item says consider varying fencing material and height. So again, we've removed that from the scope for the bungalows. This statement actually was kind of directed specifically at the bungalows, but then we address fencing at the other buildings later in the responses. Comment number 4, it says one member will not support any green cedar fencing. For that, we actually want to pull up, we have some landscape renderings. So David, if you don't mind, there is an exhibit that shows, actually, it's the other one. It is
patio perspective.
Yeah, it's the patio. Correct. There you go. Patio perspective. Thank you.
Yep.
Just to the right. That's it. Thank you. So we actually did some studying of the not just the fencing, but also the plants. And if you actually kind of scroll through this, this is looking at building B. And then the next image is actually a photo of that same area. And you can see how densely the layering of plants is. And then if you go to the next rendering, this is, from the wedding lawn looking towards building D, looking at our patio screening with the planting. And if you go to the next page, that is a photo of that area. And I think there's one more series. There we go. This is the building W, looking at those patios. This is a rendering of what we have proposed for development. And then the next image is a photograph. So, upon review with our client, we feel that the remaining locations where the green cedar fencing is still being used is appropriate due to the landscape design, which will screen the fences with layering of planting. We studied a variety of different materials with our client. And actually, in referencing the Montecito architectural guidelines, it states that landscaping should be designed to partially or completely screen walls and fences from view. Our design for the fences has been developed so that they will blend in with the planting in such a way that they will not be seen from the public views. Item number 5 says remove transoms above doors on building W and consider replacing with 8-foot doors. We actually took the board's recommendations and have done just that. Dave, if you don't mind going to the drawing set, page 55. And so this shows those taller door units and moving on, actually, we're going to stay on this for the next comment. It says, addition of a third door on end units of building W negatively affects the structure's symmetry, and they asked us to restudy. So actually what we did is we have accurately depicted this elevation. There are chimneys on either end of this building. There's also a similar configuration at T that we can reference in just a moment. But what we did is we have narrowed up the side lights, but we have added the side light on either side of it. And actually there is an asymmetrical feature here that we feel this is the appropriate response for this design. Um, and then let's also go to page 49. This here shows that actually the chimney is on the other side of the ridge for the configuration, but it's a very similar building, very similar application to building W. So we took the same approach here for adding side lights next to the doors, but keeping them narrow so that we feel this is an appropriate solution that is balanced given the elevation. Next comment says, consider keeping the trellis on the second story of building W. And we have actually done that. We noted that the trellis is currently damaged, so we're going to repair it so that we can keep that trellis. So we are showing it as remaining with repair as needed. And then the next item, number 8, says consider varying the heights and materials of the privacy walls at the main buildings. We actually have removed a large amount of the fences from the project scope. The locations where we are showing fencing is to provide privacy and will be screened from public views with planting. Building B, we have actually set a gate and hedge to kind of soften that elevation, which is on page 100. So you can see here that there are little private patios here on the north side of that where it says B1. And so we're doing just little gates there with hedging. Other places where we are using the wood fence, we've actually reduced those locations. And at building U, we've actually eliminated the wood fencing that was proposed on the west side of the building. Comment number 9 says, consider adding additional landscaping at the back gate to provide additional screening of the transformer. We have actually done that. That was our intention was to expand the existing hedge that's there. And David, there's actually an image there that is labeled as street view.
File.
So that right there shows that we have a Eugenia hedge that comes in from Hill Road. The transformer is just beyond that, and we're actually proposing to extend that hedge. So if you go to the drawing set page, I believe that was 105. Actually, I went one too far, 104, please. There it is. So that shows the extension of the Eugenia hedge at the transformer.
There's an existing planter there already, existing curb planter. We just plant hedges.
And Paul, you consider varying the height of the material at the main building. I didn't hear you address that specifically.
So the comment there is that for the privacy of those patios, we are maintaining the 6 feet, but we have varied on the north side of B, and we have eliminated some of the proposed fencing. So that's the extent of the modifications that we're proposing.
So if there's a fence, it's 6 feet high.
Correct.
Okay, very good. Thank you.
Item number 10, one member suggested looking into the availability and feasibility of utilizing a desalination water source for the landscaping. We have actually looked into that. There's actually desalinated water that is blended in with the state water in Montecito, but there is not a method of partitioning that off. So it's not available to us to utilize as a way of reducing our water calculations. So we did look into that. It's an interesting thing to consider, but it does not apply to the conditions for this project.
Mr. Chair, if I may add, we are reaching out to the Montecito Water District to see if in our future development and for other projects, that there can be some sort of allocation of the percent of desal that is blended into the system that we and others can utilize in the WELO calcs and not have that water source apply. So obviously, as you can consider that this is probably going to end up as some sort of policy statement by the water district eventually for that. So we're starting to open that up with them, and they seem to be receptive to it.
Oh, interesting. Okay.
Comment number 11 says one member suggests that if needed, that the applicant seek an exemption to AB 1881. It's the WELO ordinance requirements based on the finding that the existing and proposed semi-tropical landscaping theme represented an important historic and cultural resource that needs to be perpetuated. We did actually reach out to the building department. We have submitted to them our landscape design, our WELO calculations, our hydrozone diagrams, and we are working with them for their approval of the WELO and the landscape design.
Mr. Chair, if I may add, I've had consultations with the planning staff also on this consideration. I believe that in the WELO discussions in the past, there's been some inference as to the necessity for the whole site to be converted to be compliant with WELO. And that is not how WELO would operate within the county approval process. We are a rehabilitated landscape that is modified. That is one of the 4 criteria that applies for applicability to WELO. However, in the definition of rehabilitated landscape, it says that that is limited to the modified landscape in a project. So our WELO calcs and plans are specifically addressing the modified landscape. We're at a 0.44 factor on that. For our future projects, it will similarly do that. We believe that there will be additional challenges in those projects due to some hardscaping and other water features in there. And we will continue to work on that also. But it only applies to the modified landscape and does not require an entire site be converted.
Comment number 12 states that with the recommendations provided by MBAR, the board can generally support the changes to the main buildings, guest rooms, retail space, back of house improvements. Consider removing bungalows renovations from project description, and we've done just that for this planning case. Comment number 13, return with full details. We have actually integrated full set of details into our set. Also, based on the last presentation to the board, we took your recommendations and organized the set by building so that you would have plans, elevations, and details gathered together to have a complete picture of each building as you move through the set. And we're more than happy to go through those details if you have any questions or comments. It's up to you, and we'll review that as needed.
You done with your presentation, please?
We are.
Want me to go ahead? Okay. Okay, so before I get started, ex parte communication, which means people that have communicated with me outside this meeting. One, Mark Lloyd and I live in the same neighborhood. We don't see each other very often, but we did run into each other and we chatted for about 20 minutes about this and that. Okay. Number 2, Rob Fowler and I have talked too many times and about this project, and just so that you know that that communication has happened. And number 3, this morning Supervisor Das Williams called me and chatted to me about this project. Okay, so question. You've represented that you have to get the approval because of timing, this and that. Where are you at with the building permit process, please? Mark, you just turned yourself off.
So Mr. Chair, the building permit process, we had submitted building plans for the renovations that are occurring in all the buildings that you've seen. Those have been submitted since December, January. We're into a second plan check on a number of those. This is a courtesy plan check at risk. We're anticipating that perhaps the next 2 to 3 weeks, those plan checks will be completed. Some of them are completed and are ready for permit issuing. And of course, they can't get a planning stamp until we get through this process.
Right. Okay, very good. Thank you. Handicapped, to say the least, the pathways and things like that shown, particularly on building W, I think it is, are either not very well described or not described at all. Can we go, do you know what sheet that is, Paul?
Uh, let's see, if you want to look at the overall landscape plan, I'd go to sheet 94, and then we can zoom in as needed.
Yeah, let's go building W. It's kind of there in the middle. Do you see it? Those have patios, correct?
Yes, and in fact,
Hang on, let me
Okay.
finish my
Yep.
question. And they've got, it was represented that you wanted to be able to access them from the patios and kind of turn the door around so that your clientele could enter the building, their rooms through the patio. Is that correct?
for the ones along the north of
Yes.
W, no, those are accessed internally. There's dense planting.
And there would never be a pathway on the outside
uh,
to those.
Never been a discussion of that, correct? Yep, that is correct.
Okay, so is there any other area? That's the one that caught my eye, but
Mhm.
where you're going to be accessing from the outside where you're not showing the pathways, please.
Yeah, there is no pathways that would be along the north side of Building W.
What about the east side? Isn't that also, or is that,
So there we are showing some of the existing pathways. So what we have done is we have limited the scope that's part of this permit, and at the request of the planning department, we're showing existing conditions where we have removed stuff from the scope. We have shown a more developed pathway and landscaping design in the previous hearing, but with the basically we're going to be packaging that with the bungalows at a later date.
so you're not doing any improvements on the inside of these patios at this time?
In W, we are doing improvements inside the patios, yes, but the pathways around, we are not including in the scope at this
And
time.
do any of those include things like spas or anything of that nature?
No,
And lighting, does it include anything to do with lighting?
there are some path lights used for ambient light, and then we do show,
And where does that show up, please?
if you go to sheet, let me make sure I give you the exact page.
And I'm assuming that if it shows in one, it kind of ripples through the whole project.
Right.
Can I assume that?
Correct, yeah, we actually have it on a series of the enlarged site plans.
Okay, please.
And if you go to sheet 101, we have the light types that are called out in the lower left-hand corner of this corner of the screen,
So those are
and
wall
we-
mounted.
and those are wall mounted, correct? Yeah,
Okay, so
And-
nothing down on the ground.
correct. Yeah, not in these patios.
Okay, so, and there are no spas, at least at this time.
Not in this scope of work, correct?
Okay, very good. Okay, and then just sort of architect to architect, I don't see any drips on your door heads or on your window heads.
You want to look at the flashing
And I
details
think you
for,
could just take a look
yeah.
at that.
yeah.
It has nothing to do with the approval, but I think.
Right, we do have a set of typical flashing and waterproofing details that we included in our building department set that's also going to be part of our construction set.
Okay, very good.
Um,
So we didn't
yes.
get them. But they're there.
they are there, correct, yes.
My sense of Rob's concerns are that it's kind of a hope and a prayer in terms of what this landscaping is going to be. I've seen some pretty drawing sort of sketches that are non-specific. And we don't have a record at the end of this process that says this is what was put in and how the WELO actually works. We don't have anything specific. We're kind of doing this. So
Yeah, I mean, we can look closer at the landscape plans.
and
I
when
mean,
he believes that they are more at a conceptual and maybe at a preliminary level, but not at a final level. Do you agree with that assessment or not?
I do not agree with that assessment. I
Could you show me
feel,
why I'm wrong, please.
okay, so we have developed this because of the scope of this project, the scale of the site. It's appropriate to develop these as planting areas.
Okay,
So what we have done is if you go to sheet, I believe it is, let's see, I believe it's 105. So this shows the planting zones, and we've grouped types of plants here. And we have established these in alignment with how we did our WELO and our hydro zone design. And each of these is like a lot of these are like subtropic planting palettes for these different zones. And they have the accurate list of the plant type, the quantity, the size. And then this is actually fed directly into how we're going to irrigate each of these planting zones. So now if you want,
Paul,
yes,
I don't want to be disrespectful, but
okay.
we have a little bit of, so can you understand that this board oftentimes sees far more precise planting plans, irrigation plans, and WELO counts, very specific plant counts, locations and things. Have you seen that in projects that you've worked on, for instance, the Miramar?
Well, I've seen, there's definitely been cases where more information is provided, but this is in alignment with what the board typically requires. And we've definitely developed other projects, and I've seen numerous projects that are developed to this level of detail for MBAR review and approval. We have identified the plant palette, the quantities, the size, and the irrigation type, and it's also keyed in on the enlarged plans. If you go to the individual planting plans, you'll even see either a pattern that identifies the planting palette, the planting region, and then there's other places where we have individual plant graphics. Now, following up on Rob's comments from our previous hearing, yes, there's also another degree of this, which is development in the field. We have a long history. I mean, we've got Jimenez Nursery here with us because we're working intimately with our landscape contractor to not just select the plants, but to stage them on site, because this is an artistic element. You can't just do a simple grid. And in fact, our specs state that they're not to just do a simple grid pattern in installing these plants, that they're to be staged in their boxes, reviewed on site.
By whom, please?
By Jeff Yardy, who's
Who is he?
with Appleton Partners. He's our landscape architect.
So you have in your plan something like install under the supervision of
Yes.
somebody or other.
It
And is he a licensed landscape architect?
is.
Is, okay, very
Yep.
good.
So-
So, do you have any questions?
Is there one thing I didn't, sorry. I've been talking around the edges about, about having landscape architect is on your team as part of the process. And, so you mentioned that he's licensed. Usually I see like a license number and a reference.
Oh, yeah. If you go
I
to
haven't
the
seen
next
that.
sheet, 106. And actually, that's Jeff's stamp in the lower corner right there. But in addition to that, these are his notes about the WELO calculations, and we even have his signature on the left side where we've got a column of landscape irrigation notes. Yep. And then, yeah, that's actually Jeff's stamp right there. I can see his signature.
So I reviewed the plans in pretty good detail. I did see, the WELO designations and most of the stuff is medium. Some are labeled as medium, they're actually high. What I'm afraid of on your behalf is that the county requires, I believe it's 100% low. It may be 80%.
He's working with WELO directly, so let's get that out of our
So,
scope.
okay, so then the other thing is, do we want to look at those comparison pictures or do we?
No,
wanna move
not
past that?
now.
Okay,
Okay. So,
okay.
let me ask you one more question.
Mhm.
Documentation of what is being done is what's normally done. and then conformance in the field. What you're saying is, let us do it in the field. What is your proposal to get that documentation into the official record, sort of as a as-built set of plans? Do you have a way to do that?
There is, at the completion of a job, you actually need to have the landscape architect review the install and certify that it was developed in alignment. There's,
And are we going to be provided with relatively detailed photographs that can go into the record so that we know as a community what actually came down in 10, 20 years? Could you do that, please?
Yes, we can do that.
Okay, very good. So do you have anything more? I need to move this.
Yeah, no, and the only thing that I think would have been helpful and still would be helpful, because I won't hold up, any approval today, is maybe that could follow is what would be nice is having just some vignettes of some of the areas that have with circles and a lot more
Right.
detail on them, how you're going to put it together. It doesn't have to be precise, but at least that would have always been helpful to have had to help me understand where you folks are going with it instead of just kind of
Right. Did you see, there is a vignette that we developed for Building W that was submitted, which I believe we do have
I
available.
think he's talking about a different kind of vignette. So
Okay.
yeah, far more detail.
Well, this is right. I mean, this is, pretty pictures of the plants that are in that area and how they come together for that scene.
we are on for preliminary approval today. County Council does permit us to recommend preliminary approval if and only at this level, if and only if we ask for public comment. Is there anybody here interested in speaking to the board on item number C1, 1260 Channel Drive, please?
No request to
Okay,
speak.
very good. So I am ready to recommend for preliminary final with the applicant to provide, can you call out that note about on-site
Yeah, absolutely.
a little bit more, and to provide a photographic record, a detailed photographic record of what was actually installed? Would you be willing to support that motion?
I would like, I mean, do we have a provision to if because there's more parts of this that are coming down the pike that are not part of this approval, but so that we elevate the graphic depiction of the landscape stuff so that they either do some vignettes now that they bring later in consultation with the planner, that could be done over the next several weeks.
Or this project?
Ideally, yes, but I don't.
Would you be willing to beef up? You've seen other projects, right? You guys did the.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Would you be willing to work with the planner in consultation with Rob to get a more formalized, detailed, professional, normal, all those kinds of words, so that we can actually get a better sense of it, please? Would you be willing to do that?
You're saying that it'd be basically more of a construction set of documents.
Exactly.
Yes.
That's what we're looking for. Final.
Yeah, well, yes, we would be happy to do that. And you're willing to see how this integrates with future scopes of work.
Well, we have one project and one project only now.
Yes, correct.
That's all we care about
Yep.
now. Okay, so we need it now.
Yep.
And I don't see handicapped access on the gates, the 2 foot and all that. I think that there's stuff that's missing from the plans that if you actually do construction level plans, it's going to start showing up.
Yeah, yeah.
So
We,
I'm
we
ready.
would be happy to share that at a future.
Okay, so
presentation.
stay around for the motion. It's going to be in
Yeah.
about 10 minutes or something like that. All we can do is to recommend. We'll see what the board does.
Okay.
Thank you very much.
All right. Thank you.
Okay. Are you ready? Is everybody here ready? Dave, you ready? Okay. I'd like to call to order the March 21st, 2024 Montecito Board of Architectural Review. First item on the agenda is public comment. Is there anybody that would like to address the board at this time?
I received no physical speaker slips, and we do not have any speakers.
What
online.
about me?
Oh, I'm sorry. Yes.
Okay, so I'd like to actually address the board. Can you put up my thing? As everybody knows, lighting has become a thing. And I have spent a little bit of time working on a observation, which I'd like to, hopefully David can get out to everybody here and anybody in the audience that wants. And basically it goes through and looks at, David, if you can, I want to keep this brief, goes through and looks at the community plan provisions highlighted in red, then the architectural guidelines highlighted in red in the various places. Then the Montecito Land Use and Development Code, what actually is in there, not only the verbiage, but then as critically or more critically, the definitions, which is down at the bottom, next page. And the code actually gets very specific about what is and is not. It's not perfect, I will say that, but it's not bad either. One of the things that it does permit is that photograph with the obscure lighting, translucent cover. I always thought it had to be up in the top, but it actually can be translucent. But God bless the code, it does not say what translucent is. Next page. Then, now that we've kind of got the historical background, this is widely recognized lighting levels once you're in the property on the site, what those levels should be according to the California Business Code and the IES, which I think is the International Electrical Standards or something like that. Then the entertainment area, I found an excellent article. I highly recommend that everybody read this article. I mean, I was impressed with this thing. And it says the ideal level for a dining table, which we have outside, and the lighting levels there. Down at the bottom, it shows how to calculate that. It goes through a couple of examples so people can run that out. Next page, please. And then guidelines for exterior lighting. You can see in small type up at the top, there's this group called the Dark Sky Society. When I drive around Montecito, with very few exceptions, that place is black out there. I mean, there is no light out there. And it's got to be something to do with the Dark Sky Society. They give light spillage, light trespass levels. They suggest a lumen cap, which will be, without a doubt, be the most controversial part of this. How many lumens per acre? And it's not watts per acre, but it's lumens. There's an example from San Bernardino that actually they did it, those levels. Then some observations. It appears that the language was derived from the Dark Sky Society. Filtering of light through landscape hedging helps, path lights, hedging. Anyway, that's there. Next, please. Next page. You can read all this on your own, I hope. Then I went through and I actually grabbed some information. As it turns out, this is from FX Lighting. I don't care as a board member which is used, but they had the best information about how intense things are and where. Next, please. And next, please. And for several different kinds, we see these these fixtures all the time or something similar to that. So David, I'm hoping can email that out to everybody. If people are interested, I'd love to have you just let your planner know, and somehow, David, if you could work with the planning department on that. So that's my public comment today. I don't consider this a fait accompli. I consider it kind of a good, solid place to get started. Agenda status. Thank you. Yeah, you're welcome. Agenda status report. Anything going on, please?
No changes to today's agenda.
Minutes. Anybody got comments on the minutes of March 7th, please? Okay, I have something, discussion item number 1. This is about the sign ordinance thing. Comment number 1, carefully consider lighting and brightness. I don't know if brightness is a complete enough description of what I was trying to get at. I think that we should include the word self-luminous. That TV screen up there is self-luminous, and I want to make sure we grab a hold of that whatever the decision is made, but I think we need to address that. Then on item number 2, comment number 1. This is actually the Biltmore, which we're going to see here in a little bit, but I thought that comment number 1, I thought what we actually meant is not MBR will not support proposals to include, but MBAR not supportive of proposals. I know it sounds different, but it's not as black and white. It's not as sort of closing off as much.
Mr. Chair,
Yes,
we actually looked for we talked about a mix sometimes of having some fencing and then some walls, and
right.
I
And
don't know if that's plays into it.
Well, they talk about varying materials and height in number 3. Yeah, I think it's in there. And I think that's all I had. Does anybody else have any comments, please? Anybody? I'd like to move for approval of the minutes as amended. Is there a second?
I'll second that.
All those in favor? Aye. All those opposed? Item number 4, MBAR members informational briefing. Anybody do anything or go anywhere, please? And we have a short agenda too. Item number 5, staff update.
Nothing for me.
Nothing for me either. Nothing, thanks.
Honestly, the consent calendar, we were on for half an hour this morning. It's a good thing we kind of opened that up the full half an hour. Rob and I spent the whole half an hour chatting about this project. It's on for both preliminary and final. And we talked about every item that we just read through, and I think where we came down is, number 1, they do not anticipate their building permit being ready to be issued for at least 2 weeks. Maybe longer, but at least 2 weeks. So, but they are trying to get this portion of it wrapped up, okay? The plans they submitted are still not as complete as plans that we normally see. And what we suggested was for us to give them an approval with the applicant to work with the planner in consultation with Rob Fowler to provide construction level planting for construction level plans, at least for portions of the project, so that we can get this more carefully documented. And to that end, I'd like to make a motion. So that's where we're at. Are there any questions or anything? I'm going to ask for public comment. I want to just make sure. Anybody?
My question was that, was this scope cut in half, truncated?
Okay,
reduced?
so they took all of the detached bungalows. All of that stuff is gone.
Okay,
Okay, we're going to deal with it later, I am sure, but at this point, it's gone. And so we're just at the buildings. They did take our recommendation on the doors with a transom above it so that they've extended it up to the 8 feet. They've retained a trellis. It's going to have to, sounds like fairly important rebuild, but they're going to keep it, which helps keep that in scale on building W. And they they do want to keep the green fences. So they're fairly adamant about it, but they do feel that their planting will obscure most of that. And they also do have a landscape architect on staff, and the plans state that all of the planting material will be placed and inspected by him. It's a him, correct? During construction. So it's not just, we've got to, and they have agreed to provide extensive photographic documentation of what they actually did. So that's where we came down.
So what about the fencing at the main buildings?
6 feet high.
That will be a part of this approval.
That is part of this approval. And some private patios. Private patios don't sound like they've got spas or anything else going on with that. So they don't have any electricity going on with it or plumbing or anything like that. So any other questions from the board, please? Public comment, anybody? Speak up. Public comment, is there anybody that would like to address the board on item C1, 1260 Channel Drive, please?
No request to speak.
Okay, so I would like to make a motion and correct me, make sure I get everything in here. With the following conditions. For preliminary final with following conditions. Number one, a licensed landscape architect will be present when the location of all planting is ready to get put in the ground. Okay? What? Is staged. Number two, a detailed photographic documentation will be provided at the end of the job for as-built, to demonstrate as-built conditions. Number three, the applicant working with the planner in consultation with Rob Fowler will review detailed construction level planting of representative areas of the planting plan, which is what we felt has been missing. That's all my motion is. Is there anything else that anybody wants to add or change, please?
So I greatly appreciate how you kind of framed it, and I appreciate the applicants, their willingness to kind of work with us on that. It kind of keeps us in the position that we're consistent with all the applicants that come in, and so that was one of my concerns, so I appreciate that from you folks.
Anybody else, please? Is there a second to my motion, please? Further discussion? So this is phase one. We are going to see them again. I guarantee that. And we expect more complete drawings next time. You know that, right? Yeah. All those in favor? Aye. All those opposed? Nay? David votes no. Or Dave votes no. Okay, excellent. Item number 1, 730 Lilac Drive. We had a site visit today. We have, I think it's now 2 comment letters. It may actually be 3 comment letters, 2 of which are basically the same letter. Okay, so story polls required, appreciate response to previous comments, fire access issue is not resolved, restudy drive and motor court. MBAR remains concerned about the amount of grading, study options to reduce grading, particularly in upper portion of the property. Restudy site circulation, blend hardscape and landscape into the site. Restudy lawn area, consider artificial turf or replacing lawn with native grasses. Utilize roofing materials with low reflectivity. Increase landscape screening along property lines. No action taken. So we are on today for further concept. Shelby, are you taking the lead? Turn on your mic, push the little button. There you go.
So much.
Red is on. You just turned it. There you go.
Hear me now? There we go. Great. Well, thank you so much for meeting with us this morning out at the property to take a look at the story polls and visit the property. We appreciate you taking the time. As you know, we're here for further conceptual, and we're prepared to walk you through an alternative site plan, which we have looked at the circulation and the parking grove. We've made some updates to reduce the grading in that area. We've also reduced the size of it. And we have met with the fire department to work out some alternative access for them. The plan that you'll see and that we looked at this morning is the preferred alternative that we discussed with fire. We're no longer providing a full turnaround area motor court, you'll see a reduced parking grove space. And just, one other thing that we wanted to talk about regarding the orientation of the building, we understand there have been some questions regarding that, is that the building proposed has been sited so that the owners can really live in their property and experience the landscape on all sides of their new home. So the entire goal of the program really is focused on the orientation of the building as proposed, and they're not interested in rotating it another direction because that wouldn't achieve their desired program.
Which is, can you delineate that just a little more, please?
Yeah, as you saw on the property, it's a pretty amazing site with the natural topography and all of the trees, the numerous oak groves and landscaping. And their goal is to, rather than feel that their home is right up at the front of the property along the street, is just to feel like they're living within the site, and so that they can have great views of the ocean and have their oak groves on all sides of them, and really feel like they're experiencing their property from their home. And, furthermore, I believe we mentioned this, that rotating the building would lead to likely additional oak groves that may need to be removed from the upper oak grove. And potentially the height of the building would likely have to be reduced due to steep grade, and there'd be, additional grading. So I'll let, Esther and Michael speak to that further, but we just wanted to impress that this really is the goal of their program. Thank you so much.
Esther, you're green, you're not red. Use Shelby's mic.
I'll just add one follow-up point to what Shelby was saying about the prospect of rotating the architecture to put it more along the, in parallel with Lilac Drive. I think one of the comments from the community is that they'd like us to soften that face as it relates to the street and towards that neighbor. Rotating the architecture would only exacerbate that, if not really bring it to a point that is kind of going against that, that spirit. Our reasoning for orienting the building the way we have is, as Shelby was saying, to allow the owners to occupy all sides of the architecture and flow in and out and enjoy the site, but also to reduce its impact to Lilac Drive and also to reduce the impact to the owners, that they don't feel like they are living on Lilac Drive. So we've done several things to try to achieve that. One of them is creating the gravel, the windy gravel entry drive. That is kind of a, it pulls you off of Lilac Drive and resets the mood as you approach the home, right? And so that further reinforces that whole spirit of the design.
Yeah, nicely put. Thank you, Michael. I think the only other thing that I would add to that is that there would be additional privacy concerns for for all of the bedroom and private spaces on the second floor if we were to be along Lilac Drive. And I think we're trying to mitigate that and really provide opportunities for those spaces to be as naturally concealed by the existing trees within the property. So again, minimizing the visual impact to the street, reducing that by rotating the building partially perpendicular to Lilac, also allowing the owners to have more privacy, and also respecting the current the upper grove that we call of oaks, which we believe would be greatly impacted by rotating the building in the other direction. And as Shelby mentioned, this is our owner's interest to live this way on their property. We studied multiple different site orientations of the building and relationships to the program. So keeping the daily common spaces all on the first floor, having that direct relationship to the exterior spaces, the pool, the terraces, the gardens, the orchard, the natural orchard to the north, which we're planning on enhancing. All of that is of great value to our clients. And we feel that that would be greatly compromised if we were to place the building, very closely to the street and not really allow for it to engage with the natural topography and the natural existing trees that are along all edges of the site. That's really it for me. Yeah, so unless you have any questions now, we can look at the revised site.
Now is your time for presentation,
Okay.
then we will ask questions. So
Yeah, so if we can look at the updated site, landscape concept site presentation plan and fire access plan, that is a separate file from the originally proposed file.
Yeah.
Okay, so this diagram does a really great job at explaining what we were able to consult with Montecito Fire. So our previous plan was utilizing the parking entrance to the garage as also a turnaround space for the fire department. And so we were able to talk to them about utilizing that secondary existing drive as an exit point for the fire department. By doing that and enhancing the area adjacent to the garage on the drive side, we are able to meet the pull requirements from the fire truck for the fire department, eliminating the need to bring the truck all the way into the private drive area. And that is only going to positively impact the planting in that area. So we no longer need to impact the oak along the northeast border. We can maintain our existing planting along that area between the neighbor and that entry point. And we can also potentially reduce the amount of grading in that motor court since we're no longer required to comply with grading that satisfies the fire access. So I think that there are three really great advantages to utilizing this plan. It also does not substantially change the project, and it does not substantially change the already proposed drive approach into the property. So this is our proposed plan, alternative to having the turnaround and or hammerhead in the motor court. The next sheet is just our updated conceptual landscape plan. So again, just indicating that that parking grove is meant to be private. It's meant to be the arrival moment of the occupants. So when our clients arrive on site, and as Michael illustrated, coming off of Lilac Drive into your own private drive between lush planting on either sides of this gravel road, which leads you then to your entry point of both the garage and the building. The entry to the building is clearly demarcated with planting lush trees on either side of that, and then a progression past a water feature to the main entry of the building. In addition to this, we were asked by the board members this morning to provide an exhibit that shows the trees that are being impacted. So we did go ahead and do this quick overlay. If we can zoom into the area.
zoom up in there closely because we haven't seen this yet, David.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I'll ask Michael to elaborate more on this, but the dark lines are the footprints of the buildings, and then the dashed line is over the two-story portion of the main house. And the story poles were, again, the corners, the absolute corners of that extent, which obviously overlaps the first floor footprint.
Right, yes. And so, and also the gray pochade rectangulars are the existing structures. And so obviously the trees are laid out with that in mind. And then also just to take note of the existing topography, which it was probably a little bit more in focus today. And that specifically that the mature oak tree that is large and otherwise, beautiful tree, although it's suffered some health consequences over the last year or so since we've been going through this process. And the two smaller oak trees that are in its understory, those are actually quite lower than the usable, promontory of the site. And so that presents a challenge grading wise, but also because of the situation of the other substantial oak grove and other oak assets. we're kind of, it's pushing the architecture into that zone of the property. The other tree or trees that we looked at today was the cypress. It's actually like a multi or dual trunk there. It's actually technically two trees, but they're planted so close that you could classify it as one tree. That tree, as you can see by the graphic, is directly adjacent to the third parking spot in our garage and not navigable around. While it is a significant tree, we are recommending that it gets removed. Unfortunately, the garage, as we've presented in other forums, we're kind of sandwiched in there between setbacks and wanting to create other buffer assets in order to get into the motor court. Of course, grading is another big concern there as well. So that's those. And then also we wanted to just to identify that, there are other trees on the site that we do plan to attempt to relocate. That's always or never 100% guaranteed, but there are quite beautiful olives that we would like to relocate and will be attempting to relocate it. We are of course are not to that point in the process yet, but just wanting to make that known as that we don't intend to go and raise all of the trees on the property indiscriminately. In fact, we're trying to be as sensitive as possible. Yep.
Yeah, that'll be all.
So are you done? Hey, questions? Let's start with Tip on this, please.
Are you calling me?
Yes, questions.
Have you looked at the option of, perhaps, save all the, two beautiful cypress trees and a beautiful oak tree and then relook at the way to, reorientation of the front door? So that could be, easier access from Lilac Drive and probably a little better orientation. And with the design you have.
That's the question.
We did. Actually, we studied numerous orientations of the architecture, knowing at the very beginning of the process what the program was and the general amount of space that it would take. We looked at several schemes that put the architecture, for lack of a better term, in a bar along the frontage of Lilac. There's obviously some challenges to that and quite frankly, benefits. The challenges were that, it kind of put half of the house facing Lilac. So you had those privacy issues that we've talked about and also just the massing along Lilac. And then on top of that, it actually, because of the way that the setbacks work from Lilac, it was still impacting, I think it was actually impacting more oak trees. And in this scheme would for sure impact the cypress as well. Based on those early iterations of the design, I think we had 4 or 5 early iterations, we quickly narrowed it down with the consultation of our clients who really preferred this orientation for what it gained them in terms of being able to feel like they are living within the garden, not half in the garden, half along Lilac. And also just that, knowing that this is a view property, that by orienting the architecture in the way that it's oriented, it allows them to capture those views in their primary bedroom so that they get to spend each day, enjoying those views, enjoying those assets, not only of the immediate property, but the views beyond.
Then my second part of my question. So by projecting the massing all the way to that's the east direction, Ray, which help you capture the views.
Mhm.
How that affecting the neighbors down below? Because suddenly now that they can also see that massing project out. So it might gain your views, but it might also create some privacy issue for some neighbors.
We don't have cause to believe so. If we look at, if we zoom out on the survey, there's a substantial oak grove, which we call the lower oak grove, that surrounds the entire lower half of the property. When you're on property on this, where the proposed building is, you can't see the neighbors necessarily downhill. And so it's likewise, it's so screened by that extensive natural oak grove, which happens to follow along that natural ravine, the dashed blue line with the arrows going page right. So we don't believe that that will be visible from the immediate neighbors to the east of the.
But we did receive an email from one of the neighbors that they seen the story poles.
We have not seen that yet, so.
That just came in this morning.
Okay.
The neighbors directly to the west.
To the west. And you mentioned about the sleeping order, but the new wing, that's a living room. That's not a sleeping room based on
Upstairs is the primary suite.
upstairs.
The second level is bedrooms and office, yeah.
Right. Thank you.
Bill, questions, please.
Is maybe we can go to the floor plans real quick. Are your floors pretty much lower floor flat, upper floor flat, or do you step anywhere within those floors?
Great question. Yeah, so on the first floor, we have a depression between.
Sections, there
Right
we go.
there.
That's
Yeah,
perfect.
so this section here, section 2 actually tells the story quite well. So the first floor, is relatively flat with an 18-inch step down in the great room space, which also then further steps down into the adjacent pool terrace and entertainment court, which then steps down onto the landscape. So our intent there was to help, minimize that transition from where the grade is on the high side of the house, on the drive side, and then also where the grade is on the lawn side of the house. The second floor is all currently 1 story. That this is partially the intent here is ease of living also, just, wanting to make sure that it remains as accessible as possible for this type of site and configuration.
Is that what we would look like a basement level mechanical or something, kind of a half floor at the lowest?
Yeah, it's a 6-foot mechanical room meant for pool equipment and infrastructure.
And was there any thought about trying to shift that whole, let's say, southerly part of the building down a floor and into the hill and daylight basement kind of a thing? Did you look at that idea as well?
We did. That actually made the grading worse. So when we had attempted to bring the building forward because of the way that the grade articulates itself, it's not a straight line. It kind of curves around. And so as you bring it forward, it might improve it on this easterly end, but it actually makes things a little bit worse to the north and to the south.
Thank you.
Dave, please, questions.
Did you consider entering the garage from I guess it would be the
West.
west and shifting the building with the same orientation you have towards the south in order to preserve that specimen oak tree and the cypress trees that are currently being taken out by the parking court?
Yes, we did consider shifting the entire structure to the south. The Upper Grove, which is page bottom left, if you will, would be impacted by that. There's also
In
an,
what way? Because
Um,
if you
so if you see the,
shifted in the orientation of the house, it's parallel to those trees.
I'm sorry, were you asking to shift it completely in the same axis, right?
Correct.
Yeah, okay. I'm sorry. No, I misunderstood your question.
That's okay.
So there is a a steep grade drop off, existing grade drop off in that orientation as we come further south in that direction. One, we have the critical root zone of that 34-inch oak to contend with. You can see that dash line coming around, as it gets closer to the pool structure. But even then, that could be finessed. It's more so about the relationship to grade there that becomes a concern by bringing the building further south. Regarding the entry to the garage on the west side, again, that's a client preference. We don't want necessarily to enter the garage on one level, right? So because the drive is about 2 or 2.5 feet higher than the house, entering on one level, having your garage door facing the street essentially, and not having that privacy to park and get the cars off of that street side. So creating that privacy at the front or the entry of the building was preferable to client.
Didn't quite make sense to me.
Say again, Dave.
The, you're saying the garage has to be higher to enter it from the west?
Yes.
Yeah, the way that the grading works in order to, especially now with the fire access, to keep that, what is currently a motor court, but you can just assume it's the same grade as what would be our entry drive. That is actually up, I think it's like 3.5 feet higher than what our garage finished floor is. So it actually helps to mitigate the scale of the home, right? So the garage is actually partially submerged. And so you come around the garage. And then also it just creates we think, and I think our clients feel that it creates a better arrival sequence and a better, it makes them feel like they are parking in a garden rather than parking in, on the street, which is important to them.
Thanks.
You done, Dave? Rob,
I'm a little confused by you had that one exhibit
Mhm.
with the existing trees. Could you bring that back up? The whole driveway is different. Where is that? Is that from?
This is the survey, not the proposed. We were asked to,
Right, spot those.
yeah, so
trees.
we're not
So
indicating.
do we have those trees where they're located relative to the site plan you're proposed by any chance?
We didn't have a chance to overlay them on our site plan. We just were able to show the building footprint, on the survey.
So, I'm sorry, where are they approximate? Can we?
So if you zoom into the house, the gray area, so the 3 oaks are called out on the site plan and the 2 cypress are,
Yeah,
direct.
that closest
y- y-
parking space
Yeah.
to the main structure of the house, it's basically in that space between the drip line of the large oak and the garage.
And then I thought I saw some like an eyebrow parking out front where people parked out front and then cut through between the garage and the house. Did I see that somewhere on a plan?
Yes, so there's the new proposed fire plan will allow for us to create a deliberate gate or entry point between the garage and the house where it says finished grade 441 there. That's actually on the fire access plan. That would be a new access point between the drive and the house for fire access and also for additional circulation.
So where's that plan where that has
The fire access plan, the other draw.
it had they had the parking out front. You had like
David, can you go to the other site plan sheet? It's
I'm just
the other PDF.
what I saw on site this morning.
Next
It's
to
just thrown me
the
off.
other one that says MBAR site plan. Yeah, thank you.
Yeah.
And then the
it's
site plan sheet.
previous.
Okay,
And the idea is to just widen the driveway. It's not intended to be parking. It's just so that a fire truck could park and still there'd be access
Oh.
around a fire truck.
have you considered, with that said, have you considered where the driveway could, at that area, could pull away maybe and more gracefully kind of connect with the part that goes around the house? Right there, it looks really close to the garage at that point. It seems like if that whole section were kind of integrated and pulled away, that they wouldn't
Yeah.
feel so forced in there or something.
I think we absolutely could. Part of that is wanting to create enough buffer space to, do some beautiful landscaping and screening along Lilac. Another piece of it is simply just to try to minimize the amount of grading. Like, we are trying to anticipate that the grading of that new drive is exactly what it is currently. If we push it a little bit further, closer to Lilac, which I agree would be nice, and give us a little bit more space there. We just, and it wouldn't be that much grading. So I think we should look at it if you think that it's worth exploring. Just know that it's going to come at with a cost that some of our grading calcs will go a little bit higher.
Right, I have no more questions. Thank you.
Robert,
No questions.
architectural guidelines, right? Page 33. 3A, the location and form and volume of residential structures and surrounding improvements should be designed to blend into the natural terrain and preserve the character and profile of the slope and its native vegetation. So that is a backdrop. Anybody here visit the Barcelona Pavilion? Okay, well, I tried.
Virtually, or?
Oh, no, I was in Barcelona, and they decided that they were kind of closed for a private TV session just when I got there. I was really, anyway, I think that's a single-story building. This is a two-story building. And basically, my assessment is, at the end of the day, what your client wants is to have his and her, I assume, primary living space and bedroom space dead center on the view in three directions, south, east, and north. And that's why you're there. My sense is that you have designed the building not from that point out, given that is the primary quality, the primary driving force, but from somewhere starting up towards Lilac, I'm not saying at Lilac, but on the western side, coming out. So the question is there a configuration that enables your client to get what he and she wants in terms of the two primary spaces, their bedroom and the living room, and then take all of the other and perhaps drop that because it seemed awfully far out of the ground, and then step up to the other portions of the property and maybe can we go to a landscape plan? I don't know what that big rectangle is there. No, the open area. Yeah, so. Yeah, right there. Can you zoom in on that? Directly to the west of the pool. Somehow, the entertainment terrace, somehow bring the building so that it's not linear, but it's actually going to be stepped and enable them to get primarily what they want. I'm not trying to say no, but when I was there, man, it looked like I had this big zooming something, starting low, and the site kept dropping off, and we wanted to stay high. And I get why you did that, but is it possible to reconfigure this program so that it doesn't do that? Please.
And you're saying towards the entertainment terrace or towards the?
I don't care where it is. My sense is that where you have, I guess it's the living room on the east side. And the area directly above that seemed to me to be prime real estate number one. And that's the driving force. The question is, can you take the living room, drop it, and still get your views?
Right.
And then get the bedroom up above so that we're actually stepping the building down per the guidelines.
Yeah.
And we don't have this big airplane or this big ship or whatever you want to call it. So what I'm asking is, the question is it possible, do you believe?
Not without negatively impacting grading.
If grading were not an issue, because you're sitting so far out of the ground that you're going to be building everything up.
Yeah, well, so, granted, I mean, you got to see it today. It's a rather steep site, right? So, already we are burying what I'm gonna call the backside of the house, the part that's, within the hill, roughly 4 or 5 feet. And that's also conversely how much the deck off of the living room extends out of grade. So our middle point is kind of in the middle of the house. If you're asking if we could bury it further so that we're further less out, I think we could explore that. It might come with some other negative impacts other than grading. Grading would surely be affected. But beyond that, the entry of the house is at one elevation, and we are already stepping down the floor plan of the living room to get closer to that grade. So it's not like it's one level that just sticks out and is half in, half out. We are already trying to mitigate that difference and make it feel like it is more of the earth. And in fact, all of the use spaces around the living room do step down so that, when we are out in the landscape looking back at the house, you're never experiencing a wall or a structure that's taller than, say, 3 or 4 feet. And then those extend up to the house.
Originally, way back, I don't know,
Yeah.
10 years, 30 years, whatever, 50 years, whatever it was, we had a slope like this.
Yeah.
Now we have a slope like this.
Yeah.
And what you're actually trying to do is this. And I think it's because the slope is actually down here. You are so far out of the ground. That was my reaction when I was out there. And if you look at my question, it's not, you can't have what you want. The question is, how can you reconfigure it so that we have something that actually does feel like it belongs on the site, not like it's been placed on the site and thrown out there? So that's the question. Can you do that?
I think we
Yeah.
could potentially do that by re-articulating the second floor massing. I think that would come at a cost to the program of the primary suite. I don't know if our clients would be comfortable with that. We did look at a scheme a while back that explored that. I think it's possible. It's possible we could introduce intermediate level changes at the first floor. Again, it makes it a little bit more of a trip hazard, if you will, when you're navigating through a house that has multiple level changes.
So, a corollary to that is it possible on the second level to pull the internal portion of it, called the bedroom, back, leave the deck out there, because nobody gets to see the view when they're asleep?
Right, and I think that's what we're saying is
Is it possible?
it's possible to do that.
Okay, very good.
We've looked at that. I'm not sure our clients are gonna love it.
Okay,
but
very good.
It's possible.
Okay, public comment. Is there anybody that would like to address the board on item number 1730 Lilac Drive, please? We have three public comment letters. Anybody attending the meeting that would like to go before we do the letters?
I see that Ms. Thompson is online. Did you wish to speak on this item?
Raise your hand or turn on your mic if you want to speak, please. Yes, no? No, okay. So could you pull up, we have 3, we had 2 as of yesterday and we got 1 this morning. Okay, so these people live down the slope. And I'm just going to summarize it. We're concerned about water draining onto our property. Okay. And I'm not sure that's exactly in our purview. I think that the planner should take a look at it, but that's what this letter is. Number 2 was from the same people. More grading questions, and historical versus new. I asked the question today, you said you were on tier 1, and whether or not you'd be willing to look at ways to mitigate some of that. And you indicated at that point you were willing to, yes?
Yes, yes, willing. But also just acknowledging that water course flows right through the heart of that oak grove, and just wanting to be sensitive to that, because we certainly don't want to destroy that or exacerbate what is now not a problem by doing a bunch of grading.
That's why a lesser architect would not be assigned to this project. So item number 3, and this person lives directly to the west of the project. I've been watching closely with regards to the demo of the home across the street and proposed new construction. In the initial meeting, the picture reminded me of a Palm Springs moderate home situated further down the property. Most of the conversation was around how much removing of soil and fill, plus the fire department concerns about a turnaround. The site poles are now up, and I walked the property, which I've lived across for 37 years, excuse me. I am surprised to see such high poles, and especially concerned about the one nearest the street. Is that the beginning of the house, which is at eye level to my master bedroom? I had the impression the house would be turned to face the ocean and farther down the property. I'm also concerned about how loud and long this much larger than I had envisioned over 8,000 square feet project will require. The one next door took 4 years. And she, to the best of my knowledge, she's directly or more or less directly to the west of the property. Is there anybody else that would like to address the board, please? Okay, comments, same order. Tip, please.
Definitely, I think the site is so beautiful. And by seeing the site, I really appreciate, how beautiful the site is. And a couple of things that really came to my attention was 2 humongous cypress trees. And then we walked to the back, the beautiful oak tree. And I'm just, sitting here listening to your presentation, and, I'm looking at you have over 2.5 acres, am I right? 2.68 acres. It's a very large site. It's a luxury to do something that large. You also have 2 driveways, 2 entrances, which most people don't have. And I'm not sure why it's so difficult to do something that will fit a little better to the site. And it's almost seemed to me like this is one of the projects that I would say function follow form. It's almost like I like the architecture, but it almost seemed like the spaceship had landed and let's make it work. And I really have a problem with taking out those beautiful trees on site. And I really don't think you have to accomplish what you want to accomplish. And the house just stick way out there, which make the entrance very awkward, especially now you have to bum out an area for the fire department, pull over. You're literally about 2 feet from the garage, and then awkwardly turn into the front door, make a U-shape turn to the motor court. By doing that, you wipe out all the beautiful trees and fill up that area, because now it's much lower. You have to fill it up and all of that. And I'm not sure, there's many ways to capture the views. I'm not sure this is the best use of the site. And it's almost like the house, probably fit better down in, Hollywood Hills because that kind of thing. But this is, it's just too out of place for, for what I see on site. And I really want to find a way if you can preserve both trees. I think those are one of the better features of the site. And I think that you can get the view for your clients without really upsetting everything on site. So I'm not sure I can support the project the way it's presented right now. Thank you.
Bill, please, comments.
Yeah, I was having a little trouble with that, seeing at the site too. It feels like it's just sort of plopped on there with not a lot of concern for the texture of the landscape of the site, the topography. If it was me, I would stay away from the tree and that steep embankment there where the parking is proposed. I would look at the idea of not only stepping the elevations down to fit with the topography of the land, but also staggering the shape. I mean, I don't, in efforts to try and help you fit onto the topography, I think if you shifted it, at least the furthest lawn toward the lawn, which I guess is the south, if you shifted that toward the west, that it might work. And maybe the idea of the pool cabana and the pool and the bocce have to get rearranged in some other fashion to allow you to sort of shift everything to the west, if I'm correct. Is north up on this?
North is up.
Yeah. So, it just doesn't feel like it's fitting quite right, and you're sort of jamming the parking and the pullout right where the trees in that little beautiful setting is. Even if the oak wasn't there, I think just the topography alone would keep me away from that spot over there. So I think you're going to need to look at trying to fit it into the topography better than it is. It just feels like it's not quite fitting in so well. Thanks.
Dave, please, comments.
It's a challenging project, and I think your clients, what they want is really pushing the envelope in a lot of directions. It's maximum FAR. It's 2 stories in a very aggressive form relative to the site. You're not working with the topography, so you're asking for a lot. But I get that, and I actually story poles, I was okay with what's out there, but it's maxed out as far as the volume and the height. But I think given the way this property sits and the way it's down lower than the street, I think I can accept this building style here, even though I don't, like the other members, I don't feel like it's appropriate for this site.
You do or do not?
I do not. I think you're pushing that, you're making it really hard on yourselves doing this, but so I'm willing to get for your clients to get what they want, but I think they also have to give, and where I think you are impacting the height, the grading, and the topography and the FAR, and where I'm drawing the line in the sand is those beautiful trees and that beautiful area of the site. And I'm not convinced you can't come up with a plan that could save those trees. And I think this house could shift on its axis. You might have to compromise a bocce court or some things, but and then enter the garage from the other side. You could still have some guest parking around at the entry, so that it works as an entry, but you wouldn't have to take down those specimen trees. And that's just one approach that I can see. So for me to support the project, you really have to come back and convince me there isn't a better way to do that. And I think you're hearing that from other members of the board. I think we all feel like there's a better design solution here. But I do want to try to support where you're headed with this, but that's where I can't support you.
Thank you. Rob, please, comments?
And I tend to as a landscape architect, I don't stop at trying to save all trees on that, but those particular, the cypress and that oak are pretty noteworthy, pretty tremendous specimens. And I think if you were to lose those, that some of the reason that you like this site will be lost because of losing those two magnificent trees. So I do kind of agree with some of the with other members that at least, I think if you tried kind of shuffling some of the pieces, and, trying to save the trees, but, start out with what your client wants, kind of the main part of that, and then try to, work with saving those trees as a priority. And then what's missing on some of the kind of hardscape landscape, and I think you've done a really nice job. There's a lot of good parts to it. I think when you're like over by the deck and the pool deck and then that kind of wing, I think it'd be nice to like, if that part stays there in some form, that's where that could start. Maybe that steps down, and maybe that terraces down in some fashion and there's a lower, there's a lower view deck right there. It looks like the orchard area, I mean, it shows like there's a pathway between the lawn and the orchard, yet there's no indication that looks like, maybe that's flat there, but there looks like there's a lot of contours that you're moving past. So I'm assuming there needs to be some kind of terracing and walls and all that to incorporate the orchard. So, so I think you folks could definitely kind of take a stab at some other, kind of modifying the concepts a little bit and come back. And I think this is one of those things that sometimes, you hate to hear this now, but you go through this process and all of a sudden you come out the other end and you have something that your client and you folks end up even liking more and finding it to be even better. And I think, it starts with those two trees. Of losing those, I think, is a huge deal. So anyways, thank you.
Robert.
I'm somewhat conflicted. I agree with most of the comments of the board. However, and I was somewhat taken aback by the story poles. But on the other hand, it's such a shielded site that I have a hard time imposing my opinion on it, because I understand the concept and I think it's valid in what the applicant is trying to do. So again, being somewhat contrarian, I'm going to say I could support this project. That's it.
Something I didn't ask, and I apologize for not looking early. Floor to floors on this first floor, what's the height of that, please?
12 feet, including a 2-foot floor plate.
So it's 10.
Yes.
And what's the second? Floor to floor or floor to ceiling?
Floor to ceiling 9.
Okay, so that's a very common spec that we use here in town. So, we don't want to make it a 7'6", that's code. Obviously, we're not interested in doing that. Okay, so I normally find applicants that are thinking small, and they kind of have a little something here and a little something added on there, and you kind of get this conglomeration of a building. It's curious, but I think that maybe the problem is that you started large, which I almost always encourage, and sort of the singular volume, the singular roof, and not allowing there to be articulation within that mass. It may be okay if you can drop things even more, but when I was out there, number one, the site's remarkable. It's a remarkable site and it's been well maintained. So, but it just doesn't feel like it's part of the guidelines, and you haven't convinced me yet that it's, I understand what the clients are interested in, and I want to see a way to get them to have their dream. But I think that I don't want the tail wagging the dog here. So I think my question gave you some ideas about this and that, and I could be very far off about moving it into that entertainment area. I think there might be some oaks there, but somehow to divide this thing out, because we had a site like that. And now, somebody did that to us, and now you want to make it even worse. And it's just, it doesn't feel like it belongs. And I think was a tip comment about Hollywood Hills or Brentwood or something. Yeah, it's, but, we're trying to be Montecito. So anyway, anything else really quick before?
I just have one, just a question of advice, as we try to untangle this. And thank you for the great comments. They are appreciated. It occurs to me, though, that some of these are in direct conflict. Like, the goal of, suppressing the architecture down further into the site obviously exacerbates the grading. Reconfiguring where the architecture is or breaks impacts the trees. Getting it further into the middle of the site also exacerbates the height of it sticking above grade. So, I mean, what you're seeing is a delicate balancing of all of those concerns. And I think the question I have is, more like advice, like which one would you put the priority on? Would you put the priority on saving the trees, but maybe, be okay with it sticking out of grade more, or vice versa? So that might be opening a can of worms, and I apologize, but
I guess we all have a lot of different opinions on, but mainly had to do with the how it fits into the site. But at least from my perspective, I would like, I really don't mind the architecture, and I can see why you're doing what you're doing. It's a strong statement, and as Robert said, nobody can see it, it's yours. But I really feel like, and I look at your drawings, I think there are ways you can accomplish what you want to accomplish and still save those three beautiful trees. Those beautiful trees, it really, in a way, because you're putting the parking in that area, you convoluted the approach to the project. And it's not like you gain anything. You fill the hole, you took out the trees, and you make that nobody going to find that front door if they come into that, especially when you have I noticed you have a big cantilever from the front coming out on the second floor. And usually, when you have a beautiful element cantilever out, you can give a sense of arrival. But in this case, it's not arrival. It's just you drive past it and then you see where the front door. So because of that, I mean, for me, at least the trees is a big issue.
I do think that that sense of arrival is lost a little bit in the project. And perhaps if you looked at trying to enter the garage from the front, and then that opens up that whole part of the house and yard that's kind of now going to go away to being a motor court. And so if you kind of slid that garage back and then kind of entered from that side and tried to save those trees, that you might not have to change a whole bunch of the rest of it, and you might accomplish a lot. And then the whole sense of arrival kind of gets better on there. And then this whole notion that, the owners want to enjoy the property, and then they can keep the parking and cars on the front side and then enjoy all that stuff, including where those trees are on the back side, and be kind of uninterrupted, by having any cars there. And so you're bringing cars into some of the nicest parts and losing two amazing trees. So.
If it were me, I get, you guys are from LA, I think. Yes, okay. While you're up here, I would highly recommend that you get out on the site today before you go back. What's the lowest level that you can get the view that's acceptable? And what's the area farthest to the west, the corner of that lowest level? And having that as a base mark, and then start from there.
Did an extensive use study, so we have data that we can go back and look at.
Okay, you might want to go out there today after these comments and just say, listen, okay, I think we're done with this item. Yes. Okay. Thank you very much. Good luck with everything.
Mr. Chair, how would you like this item to return?
Concept at full board.
Concept, further conceptual?
Yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you, Kimberly. Item number 2, 1950 Lemon Ranch Road. Danny, are you with us? And Stacy, are you with us?
Yes, I'm here.
Okay, you are on for, oh, good. You are on for prelim final. And go ahead, please.
Okay. Yeah, just probably need a quick refresher on this one. It's been a while. The process that's caused delays is related to a modification to the building envelope that was always a part of this project as proposed. And that involvement, there's a process within the county for that, and as well as interaction between the easements that create these, the building envelope. And it was a relocation of a sanitary sewer line. So we had to work through approvals of that, and then also with Burnham Wood and their drainage easements, which overlapped. So there was really a lot of back and forth in easement language that kind of had us sitting and waiting for a while. But we've made a lot of progress on the design, and just like to, I guess, walk you through those. So the project is in Burnham Wood. It's one of the last few undeveloped lots there. Yeah, great, thank you. It's on Lemon Ranch Road. It's on the north side of the street, so you know, the property faces to the golf course to the north and kind of has some views up into the distant hills. It's relatively flat to the south. It's on a cul-de-sac, so there's only 2 houses further down the cul-de-sac, and then across the street is the driving range of Burnham Wood Golf Course, kind of right midsection of the driving range. So it's a pretty quiet street. There's not, the only parking for the driving range is for golf carts. So there's not a lot of cars that come by.
Danny,
Yes.
may I take an executive action here?
Yeah.
I think we can be brief in this presentation.
Okay.
I think we've looked at it. I think the board was pretty happy with it. I think that we should take a look at the site plan and maybe
Sure.
the elevations, and then if there are questions.
Yep.
Thank
Okay, sounds good to me. Shows the easement challenges there. So this, you can see this red is the north-south easement that kind of defines the new building envelope. There's still a good chunk, about a quarter of the property that, you know, is just, we can't have structures on top of. And then the new sewer line, the new sewer easement comes in from the south on kind of on the western property line there, and then takes a turn and heads north. So that's what you're seeing there. I guess you go to the next.
I bet if we went to Stacy's drawings, they'd tell
Yeah.
us more for the site planning and your drawings for the elevations.
Yeah,
That's true.
Yeah, that's good. We can go, let's jump to Stacy's site plan, which I believe is toward the end. Let me tell you, it's page 93 in the set. Okay,
So the golf course is up, the road's down, neighbors are left and right.
yes, that's correct. So, you know, there's kind of a little, what's unique about this property, I think, is it has this sort of extra width, this sort of space that allows us to kind of not have a garage and driveway facing the street, which not all houses, lots in Burnham would kind of have that width to them. So that's, I think, one of the nice things about this lot. It's relatively flat. So we're cutting in slightly to the north, which kind of, you know, nicely nestles the house into the property. The pool wall to the north is like a, you know, it's retaining about a foot, maybe 18 inches at most. And then the little planter wall to the south along the street is retaining, about 2 feet. So you can kind of see how we just are kind of balanced in our cut and fill. And if we go back to, there's a separate attachment that shows some renderings of the property that I think go well with the site plan. It's kind of from the, golf course side, the driving range side of the street to the south. It's from the southeast corner. We did some story polls with as required by the HOA. And we had kind of notified you guys, said you don't need them, but let us know. So we did notify you guys of that. At the time, I don't think anyone was interested. You can see this first building here, this sort of horizontal line of the low side of the gable that runs parallel to the street. In our story polls, that was the HOA thought what we had previously was a little high. We ended up lowering that volume about 20 inches, so almost 2 feet. They were happy with that. So what you see here is the revised lower elevation of that building. Go to the next, please. Yeah. This is kind of from the south, but a little bit more west.
Danny, I bet you can be twice as fast and still effective.
Hey, fine with me. Okay, so I think, why don't is there anything you want to look at?
Elevations, please.
Okay, so those would be page, they're about page 30. No. They're page like 20, starting on page 22, has a material palette. So there's some cast in place concrete, board form concrete, which will have an integral color, very subtle. We like an outback or a pebble, which almost does not look colored at all, but it gives it just a little bit of an aged look. So it doesn't look like fresh, bright, brand new concrete. It's kind of has a warmth to it. We think that will complement the clear cedar siding, which will do a transparent or semi-transparent stain, and kind of there's two colors, Georgetown gray and Starlit gray, that kind of just start the cedar off looking like it's aged and weathered, and kind of allows it to naturally age into that stain over time. The metalwork will be a storm gray or midnight bronze. They both have a low reflective index of either 0.28 or 0.29 on that metalwork. And that would be the roofing and sort of the fascia edge on the big flat roof and the gutters and downspouts, and also the chimney shrouds. Let's see, we got Otima doors and windows. They're an aluminum door and window with a 3/4 inch frame, so there's not a lot of material on them. And that we'll do a dark bronze on those thin frames. The exterior plaster, we've got a little bit intermediate colored plaster. That'd be La Habra Silverado color, has a LRV 48. It's kind of an earth tone beige with undertones of warm gray. And then I'll let Stacy kind of take it over and talk about the material palette on the landscaping.
Very
Stacy?
good. Thanks,
Yeah.
Danny. Overall, the house really settles nicely into this existing neighborhood and all. So we were just complementing the architecture with some native type plantings. Got cobblestone coming up into a gravel courtyard, probably concrete or stone pads going to the front door with a water feature. The spaces are pretty minimal, and we had to deal with access driveway way ability for the sewer easement access. So that's what you see on the upper left-hand corner of the property, working with Montecito Sanitation on that. The linear pool, what Danny said, with the raised bond beam. Yeah, we're here for final, so we've got planting plans if you want to look at the planting design.
Just
Um,
one at a time.
That's
Next.
just some quick imagery of things as well. The irrigation all meets the MWELO requirements. That's a construction plan, so just showing all the different construction elements and detailing that go along with it. You can continue down. These are all just construction details of elements within the landscape. Pool plan. Pretty straightforward. This is the irrigation plan, and you can see all the MWELO calculations in the lower left corner. Drip irrigation with drought tolerant. We have the only spray that we have is for the we're using grass roads pavers for the sewer easement access, that lawn area, which was a good compromise with the sanitation district. Irrigation details. Go down to the planting. This is the planting plan. If you want to zoom into this, see the plant material that's been selected. It's pretty straightforward. We're using olives as the predominant tree, but we have some accents of Acacia baeliana. And then on the east side, we've got some Acer palmatum. There's a little private garden off the master bathroom that we're kind of creating with some almost like with pebbles and rockery and things like that. So very drought tolerant. Succulents, natives, ceanothus, agaves, lantana, lavender, etc. Salvias. And if you go further down, you'll see on the next sheet, next couple sheets, the lighting plan. There you go.
Rather than getting into that, which I think may be a more detailed discussion than need be today, could we deal with that after questions, please? Stacy?
Sure.
Okay. Do you have anything else then, please?
I don't think so.
Yeah, we're gonna.
So, John, did you say that you want to talk about lighting later? Because we have some
Yeah, we'll
exterior
just
lighting.
watch the questioning and we'll see what happens. I think there are briefer and more expansive ways of dealing with this subject, and I'm trying to be briefer.
Okay.
So just watch, please. Okay, so Robert, questions?
I'm not familiar with this, so I really have no questions. I think this must have been reviewed
Yeah, a while ago.
long before my time. The only question I might have is what is the elevation of the finished floor compared to the street? And does that explain that long white wall that's along Lemon Ranch Road?
Yes. The elevation is about, I want to say we're about 4 feet above Lemon Ranch Road to the finished floor. And that's kind of trying to strike the balance between, with the grade on site, a fairly compact site, and trying to not be, not in a pit to the north. So we are cutting in a little bit to the north in kind of a gentle way that doesn't make, the north facing side of the house feel too buried. And then we have a really big buffer between the street to do a lot of layering of landscape, with that wall, so it doesn't feel like a big wall. You can see that on the
Yeah, and what's the
renderings.
planting in front, Stacy, of that wall?
Stacy?
You're on mute, Stacy.
Sorry. We have olive trees that'll help soften the facade of the house and also give some depth to between the wall and the front walkway that goes to the front of the house. Specific on plants, I think we have some ceanothus and lavender, salvias.
It'll be pretty much covered up by the time it grows in.
Right. Yeah.
Okay, no more questions.
Dave, questions, please.
No questions.
Rob, questions, please.
Can I just see those 3Ds, please? Um, so my question, and the plans are really nicely detailed, is did you consider possibly introducing, there's like, it's very heavy on the olives along, is that Lemon Ranch?
Lemon Grove, Lemon Ranch.
Lemon Ranch. And so it's one of those cases, well, so I'm just wondering, did you consider kind of having, you have one tree, did you consider kind of creating a hierarchy where you maybe enhance the main front and then maybe do something different? Or say that you come in or?
We did think about, having a variety of different trees. However, with the style of architecture, they're more going with the minimalist type of effect. And so we were trying to minimize the types of materials and keeping it somewhat consistent. Olive trees are easily and readily available at a nice size. So if we can get nice larger trees to go in, and then the plant material is a little bit smaller, it tends to work out well for budget purposes in addition to aesthetics.
Okay. All right, and could we just look at the other elevations? And then I just want to scroll through those, but then I don't have any more questions. So thanks, Stacy.
Is that it?
Mhm.
Bill, please, questions.
I was looking for light fixture F
It'd be on Danny's plans.
for the building.
Danny, do you know what page your light fixtures are on, please?
Yes, let me get
Right.
there. It's,
So
F, lower right-hand corner.
it is.
No, I think yours
Uh,
were different on the building, weren't they? Or is this the same as what was on the building?
Yeah, these are,
I thought I saw a hanging fixture. Okay, well.
so
this
if you, on page 50, I would say 52 is probably the best. Stacy's coordinated with ours in terms of what's attached to
There
the
you
building,
go.
so.
That light fixture F is different.
So you'll see these, and I did see, John, your document that you sent out. I
Is
thought
that,
was-
Danny, is that light fixture is the source up inside the housing there?
Yeah, it is.
Yeah, all of these
Okay.
have the bulb in there.
Okay, that was
There's
all.
very few of those Fs, and the nice thing
Chip,
about them is they hang down
questions?
very, very low.
No question.
Yeah.
Okay, so I have no questions except okay, so I have this lighting observation thing I sent out not only to the board, they'll get it today, later, but to you, Danny and Stacy. And rather than trying to get into it at the full meeting, I'm wondering if the three of us could somehow find a way to discuss the amount of lighting here and then bring you back on consent next week. The question is, would you be willing to do that?
Yes.
Yeah.
Jason, okay, and number two, roofing material, is it a matte finish, M-A-T-T?
Yes, and it has a low, it's matte and it has, and for the various roofing metal materials, it has a low SRI, which is their reflectivity.
Well, okay. Okay, public comment. Is there anybody that would like to address the board on item number 2, 1950 Lemon Ranch Road, please?
No request to speak.
We're on for preliminary final. As everybody here knows, lighting has been a tripping point for a lot of finals. And I think I'm finally getting a handle on levels of lighting and stuff. We haven't discussed that at the full board, but what I'd like to do is to make a motion for preliminary. Let Danny, Stacy, and I discuss this. He actually sent me an email or something that said, can we chat? And so, and then come back next week for final, and we will chat at that point on consent. Is that okay?
Yeah, I just have.
Yeah. When is the next meeting date? Sorry, just to make
Two
sure.
weeks. 2 weeks.
So the week, yeah. It will have to go to the next. I got this kids spring break is the fourth.
You may not need to be here, Daniel. Let's get you on there so you can't say we're holding. Stacy, will you be around?
I think is it the
The
4th?
fourth.
I am out of town that day also.
1 month. Okay. You're okay with that, right? In terms of building department and all that?
Yeah, I mean, as
Okay.
long as we're headed towards, final.
So my comment is, and Stacy, the plans are really nice. The one reaction why I asked about the olive trees, and I don't know if it's the 3D that works against you, but it feels to some degree that the building is almost too choked off by the olive trees. And that the front entry is maybe choked off by the olive trees, and that there's a chance there maybe to open that up a little bit and, keep your framing to the kind of far edges of the house and then open up the middle so it invites you. It seems like the olive trees almost they'll get so big one day that they'll almost hide the front entry, and I don't think that's what you want to accomplish. So that's why I was asking about. And I don't want to interfere with your design, but I mean, whether you might be open or just at least consider maybe changing out the landscape so that the front door is kind of highlighted and then the ends of the house are kind of screened off like you're trying to do. So that's my.
What do you
Right.
think, Stacy?
Burnham Wood originally wanted some additional screening for the front of the house. So I think we ended up adding the trees at the base of the wall as opposed to all the trees at the top. But maybe there's a different type of accent tree in the center to highlight the door so it doesn't look so just all the same and for the front.
Thank you.
Are you done? Okay, I'd like to make a motion for preliminary approval as submitted with the applicant to work with John Watson on the lighting plan to come back in 1 month on consent. Is there a second to that motion,
I'll
please?
second that.
Any first, so you're ready, you're gonna get preliminary and it's just, we'll just work this out. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. All those opposed. Thank you so much. Have a nice holiday with everybody.
All right,
Thank you.
thank you.
Bye.
So item number 3 out of 5, 2445 Sycamore Canyon Road. Brian, are you with us today? You're with us. Okay, so if everybody remembers, this is a really long skinny lot. It has 2 garages on the way up, and they're doing a comparatively small remodel addition up on the building in the back. So, you're on,
Hey,
and you're on for preliminary final today.
my name is Brian Miller. I'm the agent and designer of the project. Next to me is the owner, Stephanie Schuman. To get to the other people on the board that are not familiar with the project, I'll go through it real quickly. It's an interior lot. So there is no public visual impact of the house from Sycamore Canyon Road. It's a historical property. The parcel of this property was subdivided from an estate, and the particular house that we're working on, what was originally the chauffeur's cottage. And what the client would like to do is to expand the area so that they had a master bedroom suite with, or primary bedroom suite with primary bath and primary closet. It's a fairly minor addition. My goal in the addition was to make sure it looked like part of the original structure, so it's not an obvious add-on, but a continuation of the original style, which is a little odd, different, but in keeping with that style. That's what the main goal was. Now, there have been some changes since the last time I presented it. If you could go to the exterior elevations, David, I'll show you what we've done. These are the existing elevations. As you can see, it's a board and bat with some trellis elements to it. So on the right side, the windows have been changed. The client wanted to enlarge the windows so that that becomes a gallery, which really kind of gives it a really dramatic effect in that whole area. Also, the plate height has been raised a bit to match the existing for ease of construction, and gives it a higher ceiling height inside, yet it doesn't really affect the mass, bulk, and scale of the overall house. We're also going to make sure that all the windows and doors are consistent throughout the structure, because there is kind of a mishmash of different types of windows that have been replaced and put in during, through the decades. And the other thing I wanted to bring up is the FAR, which is rather high. And part of the reason for that is because of the other existing structures on the site. There is two other large structures that were originally the garages that house the chauffeurs, or the garages for the original estate. One of those structures is now going to become a accessory dwelling unit. And we also wanted to point out that most of the structures around this, the other properties around this particular project are well over the FAR of one, I think, particular project is 120% FAR. So our point of view with the high FAR is the fact that the addition is a single story and there's no visual impact being caused by the addition. And also that it's consistent with the neighborhood FARs that are surrounding it. So anyway, that's our argument about that particular high FAR. And I think that's it. If you have any other questions, be
That's
happy to
the
answer.
FAR study he provided.
Yeah. So that kind of shows you what the FARs are surrounding that property. Did you want to add anything, Stephanie?
Speak into the mic, please.
Well, I'm hoping that we're not going to be penalized over the FARs, because the whole point is to preserve the historical nature of this property, and we are stuck with those giant outbuildings that did serve as housing for basically the people that built Montecito in 1911. They were occupied since 1911. And, what we're really trying to do, it's not like we're trying to take advantage of the guidelines and be greedy with our square footage. It's a pretty modest ask. And the reason is because, I have my son here. My kids are sharing a bedroom and we need to have another bedroom. So they're not sharing a 10 by 10 space anymore.
Thank you. Questions from the board, please. Bill?
Brian, I didn't see a lot of details there. Have you gotten to that?
Not yet. We're not quite at that stage. I'm trying to get preliminary final, and like there have been some major changes in the original presentation. So I just wanted to kind of get your blessing at this point, and then we'll definitely get you details at the next go round.
Thanks. Dave, questions, please.
No questions.
Tip?
So your new FAR is 1.13?
Yes.
Thank you.
Is that it, Tip? Yep. Robert, please, questions?
Brian, what are the size of those windows on the right side there on the south?
I think there should be a window schedule on the plans.
They look awfully, almost too big,
Let's see.
but
You see, David, is there a sheet with window schedule on it? Should have a window schedule. Pretty sure we had one. There it is. Wait, back. There you go.
oh, I see. So it is like a gallery that you're,
Yeah, if you want to look at the floor plan, you can see that's a gallery type setup there. And it steps down. in that area.
Okay, no more questions.
Rob, questions, please.
Is there supposed to be landscaping associated?
Well,
I can answer that. This property historically didn't have any landscaping. You can see that in the old photographs that exist from the 30s and the 40s. And it's really just a lot of big old oak trees, and we can't really fit any landscaping around that. I really don't want to take out any trees. I love my trees, and I like the natural leaf litter and the birds that it attracts. So we're not really into planting anything new.
you didn't do the site visit, but it is old world Montecito back.
It is old, and I did a lot of research on it, and it is historically significant, even though they didn't say so in the historical report. They kind of poo-pooed it, but there is an intentional design element to it. It's really balanced. When you're in the main house looking out, you have, I mean, it's just a perfectly balanced with a tree in the middle. I mean, it's really pretty nice. It doesn't look so much in the two-dimensional pictures, but I mean, I really love it. And I brought some photographs to kind of prove that if you want to see them.
Oh, I'm good, thank you.
And Brian, did you add up all the FARs and divide by, it was either 6 or 7, I can't remember which it was.
I use that thing they have where you fill in the numbers and then it came up with that number.
Yeah, but that has 6 or 7 different properties. Did you add up those numbers and average them out, please?
Oh, I did not do that.
Okay. How does 106.5 sound?
Sounds great to me.
Okay, that's what it is. I did it twice. Okay.
Thank you.
Public comment. Is there anybody that would like to address the board on item number 3, 2445 Sycamore Canyon Road, please?
No request to speak.
Okay, so we're on for preliminary final. I will jump ahead right here, and I just chatted with Bill here for a second. Neither of us feel that it's ready for final. You just don't have the details. Right. Yeah, so he's really on for preliminary, and it is over the FAR, not a lot, but so we have comments. Bill, please.
Yeah, I think I could approve the larger size 113. Seems like relatively modest addition. It is a small lot, and you have all the existing buildings. So, and it's a flag lot, so you really don't see it from anywhere. I didn't go to the site visit, but it sounds like it's pretty well screened. So for those reasons, I could support the overage on the FAR, and I'm fine with you matching the architecture as you have. So we'll look forward to seeing details.
Dave, please, comments.
I completely agree with Bill's comments, and I appreciate how much you enjoy your house. That's nice to see.
Thank you.
Yep.
I think it's fine. I don't have a problem with that 1.13 FAR.
Robert.
I'm fine with the FAR and look forward to seeing the details. And I'm not sure if you've talked to Fire about the understory, the lattice work.
Oh, we have talked to him. Aaron came out and we walked the whole property, and at some point we're going to address the lattice work on that front patio deck thing. I really dislike the lattice work, and we're hoping to close that in at some point, but we just have a priority of getting these bedrooms built and then revisiting that at another time. We just don't have the budget for it, basically.
Thank you.
Rob.
I don't have much to add from the rest of the board. And the only thing is, if there is an opportunity to do any landscaping at the entry by the street, and I can't tell, maybe there isn't, then that would be the only place I could see you adding some landscaping, just to create a nice sense of arrival at the street. If it's, but other than that, I appreciate how much you like the property too. So.
I have been a busy boy. Not only did I do lighting, but I looked at sort of this and that about what is and not in the architectural guidelines and in the ordinance. When we study it, we find that Summerlin, immediately to our east, has an FAR in the ordinance. When we look at it, the city of Santa Barbara, directly to the west of us, has the FAR in the ordinance. When we were the first community 30 years ago to have an FAR. I was involved with that, and there was a brouhaha. I will tell you about it. This was not quite combat, but there was vigorous discussions, as I have to say. What we have not done is develop a methodology to make a determination on overage of FAR. In doing this, the city of Santa Barbara takes 20 contiguous properties, the 20 contiguous properties. As you figured out, which you did, it was very obvious. that you did.
85% of FAR you have to.
Well, no, but average them for a modification. Okay, I don't want to do that today, but this was an introduction, and you have mentioned that we need some kind of a methodology. I think we do too. It's not for today. Now, I normally vote against a project you can't definitely prove it's over. I think this project is very modest, very deep in. I think it's got an FAR, it's got an ADU on it, which I'm not particularly in love with ADUs because it's from the state imposing the requirement on us. But I am going to support this one, but I will only support for preliminary because I don't think you've done the work to get to final.
Right.
All the
Oh, I agree.
details and
Yeah.
stuff like that. So would somebody like to make a motion, please?
I'll make the motion to grant preliminary approval as submitted to return to
Consent, yeah.
for final review.
There a second on that, please?
Second that.
Is there any further discussion? All those in favor? Aye. All those opposed. So on the consent calendar.
Thank you very much.
You.
Yes, we can take a break. Let's take 5 minutes, everybody. So are we back, gentlemen? Okay. Item number 4, 618 Hot Springs Road. Daryl, are you here with us or somebody else, please?
Yeah, hi, John. Daryl Becker with Becker Studios and Scott Menzel, together with Ken Lindstedt, the project architect. We have there were some minutes from the comments from the last meeting. We're back for preliminary final today. The two kind of sort of compelling mentioned items in the last meeting was a request. I think the board loved the project, but there was a request to consider reducing the height of the building by 2 to 3 feet, and then also add some screening at the westerly perimeter and some screening at the back of the property. Again, we're here for preliminary final, so I'll take you quickly to sheet 5, which goes through the finished materials on the
Okay,
project.
what? We have a comment. I didn't see this memo. I somehow missed it. Okay. Staff would like to note that proposal lights number 4 and 5 on sheet A010 are not compliant with the Montecito Land Use and Development Code standards and will have to be redesigned or something. Staff would like to note that 2 oak trees are proposed for removal as part of this project. The removal of trees is to allow for adequate fire access of or to the proposed project. Is there another page? Anything down next? No, okay. So Daryl, were you aware of that memo?
Yes, correct. So
Okay.
just getting ready to mention on page 5, we have the project finish material board. And then I'll go to sheet 11 after that. But on sheet 5, we've got our color palette with the stucco and steel siding, the La Habra 505 agate LRV 65, and then the other appropriate materials for the roof and walls as you are represented. If we go to sheet 11, that is the representation of the project lighting. And we are withdrawing fixtures 4 and 5, and we plan to use fixtures 1 and 3 related to the project. I think these they believed that they were night sky compliant, but they determined later they were not. So 4 and 5 are intended to be withdrawn. And then briefly, to the extent that it's mentioned by planning staff, we had successive meetings, multiple meetings with fire department in terms of access to the property. So on sheet 14, there's a representation of our fire protection plan. And we did our best to create this fire department hammerhead that was required. And unfortunately, it requires a removal of, one not so significant tree at the right front corner, and then another tree. There really was no alternative. The other alternative was to remove more oak trees closer in to the, I guess it would be the westerly connection, but this was a minimal interference with 2 trees. At that point, we can go to sheet 19 where we have the elevations of the project represented. And 19 and then 20 are the rear elevation. And then these are the renderings of the elevations. The architectural are on 21 and 22. And I guess also to round out the completed package, we have a window schedule on, I'm sorry, 30 or 29 with details, and on page 30. And I think we have wall sections on 25. Sorry, I got that wrong. It's on 26. And that pretty much covers the architecture. If there's questions about the architecture or lowering the height of the building, I have Ken Lindstad on the phone here as well. We submitted an exhibit. I think it's a separate attachment that
he's
showed
right.
his study of reducing the height.
There's another, like a 2-pager or 1-pager.
Correct. There it is. So Ken did
Everybody remembers we did a site visit of this. It was at the end of a long driveway. The neighbor on part of the way down the driveway on the left wanted us to come and look at the house. This is the property that goes across much of the property, east to west, if everybody remembers. Yeah. Okay, thanks. Thank you.
Okay, and then I don't know if we have anything else to add, but if there's questions and Ken's available.
We'll pick it up after the landscape is presented.
Correct. So Scott, go ahead.
Sure, good afternoon. If we could jump to page 36, that should be the first sheet of our planting plan. So I have the property split into 3 sheets. This is the northernmost third. So north is straight up. To the north is 630 Hot Springs, and to the west or the left is 616 Hot Springs. Those were 2 neighbors during the conceptual phase that expressed some concern over the visibility of our proposed residence. And to help mitigate those concerns, we are adding 5 new trees near the northern property line, 4 olives and 1 oak. And then to the west of our structure, directly off the west end, there are 3 standard bay trees. And then we are also surrounding the property with a new hedge. And that hedge will consist of both bay as well as Carolina cherry. If we could go to the next sheet. So this is the southern side of the house. The motor court is to the west or the left. The planting up around the house and in the backyard, which was on the previous sheet, is predominantly a low maintenance Mediterranean garden, somewhat informal. As we move south, the southern half of the property becomes a lot more natural, and we transition to a more native meadow landscape. And if we could go down to the final sheet, which is the southern half of the planting. I should also mention that the general layout has not really changed since the conceptual phase. On this southern portion of the property, there's a lawn, bocce, tennis court. And again, landscaping is a little more natural and formal here with native grasses and olive trees and new oak trees. If we just keep scrolling through the plan sheets, you'll see the plant palette. Following the plant palette will be the water calcs and hydrozone plan. And then eventually we'll land on the landscape lighting plan. Maybe we could go 1 more sheet further and you'll see cut sheets of all the proposed fixtures. There's a path light, 2 optional step lights, actually 3 optional step lights. I do want to point out that I am proposing 6 downlights from 3 of the oak trees that are directly in the absolute middle of the property. So
Can I interrupt here?
Sure thing.
As everybody knows, there is concern on the board, maybe me more than others, but at least on the board about lighting. I went on out and grabbed a whole bunch of information and put it together, which I started sending out today. What I'd like to do is to send this to you and Daryl, and then we will chat about lighting and then bring it back. You're not going to get final today, no matter what. Daryl, you have an insufficient number of architectural details, so neither Bill nor I can support that. And so we can deal with lighting at consent. Would that be okay with you? So we don't have to go over it now?
Ish, I would,
Is that okay with
I,
everybody?
I would love to at least get some feedback to make sure that what I'm proposing is acceptable when we return.
Well, that's what's no, I'm gonna want to talk with you privately about this.
Got it.
Okay, if that's okay with you. If not, we can do it right here.
I'm fine with that.
Okay, very good. So
John, we're okay with preliminary today if somebody will make that motion and come back on consent after.
yeah,
putting the-
okay, in 2 weeks or something.
That's
Okay.
perfect.
Anything else from you guys today?
No, that covers.
No.
Okay, questions, Dave?
No questions.
Rob?
What's the, so you have a rectangular piece of real sod down by the sports court?
That's correct.
And then you have, what's the ground cover that's kind of in that whole other area that comes back around that one straight pathway? What is that?
So surrounding the lawn and then moving up north and flanking that pathway that you're talking about is botula or mosquito grass. And I have some flowering perennials mixed in.
Did you consider maybe having a more meandering kind of ribbon around that path of lawn, connecting that and then kind of doing what you're doing? It's so what I'm seeing is there's a lot of juxtaposed rectangles, and then it would be nice, I guess. Did you consider maybe having some organic kind of forms in the middle in there?
No, we really hadn't. The lawn is rectilinear because the intent of that is to be functional for kids to play sports on it, and I wanted to maximize the size of that lawn and our without breaking our water usage limit. So using lawn in a more aesthetic way was something I was trying to avoid.
Okay. So you're at the maximum size on that lawn? I mean, or if you
No, I mean, our ETAF is at 0.44, so we have 0.11 more we could push that to.
Yeah, it seems like it could be bigger, but anyways, okay, that's all I have for now.
Robert, questions, please.
No questions.
Bill, questions?
Daryl, how would you describe the style of this architecture? Is it more of a contemporary Mediterranean or, and the reason I ask is I'm looking at your railing proposals there. It looks like it's glass, or maybe they haven't distinguished it yet.
Ken, do you
I
want
can
to?
speak to that. Yeah, this is Ken Lindstedt. I would say that it is a house trying to tread the line between something that feels like it's got some context of an older house, but also being more contemporary. It's just this delicate balance. So yeah, there are going to be some contemporary elements, and I think that glass rail is probably the one that really kind of goes a little bit over into the modern realm. But for the most part, I would say we don't really have a lot of glass going on. It was that one back view to the mountains.
Oh, it will be glass railing then.
It will.
Okay. All right. That was it. Thank you.
Chip, questions, please?
No questions.
And I have no questions. Public comment for item number 4, 618 Hot Springs Road. Anybody, please?
No requests.
Okay, we're on for preliminary final. I think Bill and I both feel those details are insufficient, and since we're going to be chatting about lighting, we're not going to get the final today. Comments on this? People ready for this? Where are we at? Dave, please.
I can support the project for preliminary approval, final on consent.
Is that it? Rob, please.
I think everything you've done Scott, is really nice. The only thing that I'm reacting to, I guess, is that lawn piece. Maybe you use that extra lawn allocation and to kind of incorporate, and this is, you know, it's your design, but it seems like that lawn is kind of feels detached from the rest of the house, and that maybe if you had kind of a meandering swath on both sides of that walkway, and then that connected that rectangle, maybe the rectangular piece was a little more rounded or something, then you still had the function for something to play. And then you start to loosen up some things. It seems like there's a lot of square and hard corners that are way away from the house. And then that's where I like seeing stuff get a little softer, but it's your design. So that's just a suggestion.
Robert, please, comments.
No comments.
Bill, please.
I could support this as a preliminary and come back for final on consent.
Chip?
Yeah, I can support it for preliminary approval and come back on consent for final.
Can we go to the renderings, please? I don't know where they are. I think they're in this set.
Nineteen and 20.
Yes.
Okay, so we have the privilege of seeing many different renderings at this board. And it could be the rendering, or it could be the design, and it's a little hard to tell. So I don't want to be pejorative to the design, but this sort of step halfway between modern and Spanish, it either has to be done really well or it's not going to be really good. So I just want to make sure that at the detail stage, which you have, you really identify ways to make this building spectacular. The reason we went to architecture school, the only reason, so we could learn about Mies van der Rohe. You know, God's in the details. So I just want to say that I hope that you're very careful in what you do here, and you know, it can tip one way or the other. I'm going to vote for it. I don't think it's a community, but in terms of a piece of architecture, I think that it is something that I'd like you to really seriously consider. I might ask you to, for your own work, to going out to Pinterest or one of those and just study every single building that's kind of close and make sure you understand which way you're going to push this. Okay,
Sure.
so fair enough?
Fair enough.
Okay, who would like to make a motion for preliminary with final and consent, please?
I'll make the motion to grant preliminary approval and to return for final on consent.
There a second?
Second that.
All those in favor? Aye. So Daryl, Scott, and Ken, I will send this lighting thing through Soren to you, and then we're gonna chat a little bit and try to figure out how to get this to work, okay?
Understood. Thank you.
Thanks
Appreciate
a
it.
lot.
Thank you.
Item number 5, our last item for today. Yeah, so. Yeah, exactly. Okay, so we're on for final today. And the comments were nice architecture and landscape design, mass bulk and scale appropriate, 2 driveways acceptable. Restudy exterior lighting, provide photometrics. There was one, and I think now there's a second one, which I haven't seen. Provide concrete sample, I guess, for the wall. Consider reducing size of the hardscape pathways blocks. Differentiate between main and service drive entry gates. Restudy parking area adjacent to southeast property line, increasing landscaping, reducing hardscaping. Consider adding cement plaster to concrete exterior. study ways to soften the appearance, consider alternatives to return to original soft rammed earth concept. Leela? Yes, yeah, remember, Dan. It's spelled Lila, but it's said Leela. So the floor is yours.
Yes, I'm Leela. I'm the project manager at Anacapa Architecture. I have Dan to my left, who's the principal, and then Chris joined us via Zoom last preliminary hearing, and he is here in person with Ground Studio, our landscape architect. We are here for final. We have appreciated the comments the board made last time we were here, and we are ready to revisit those. David, I did email you the revised photometrics, and I was hoping we would be able to pull that up. Address.
Yes, for future reference, once the hearing starts, it's questionable whether I'm going to see your email.
Comment number 4, restudy exterior lighting. So this was a comment that, Bill, you addressed when reviewing our reflected ceiling plan of our main house. So what is included in our MBAR set is a photometrics of the original RCP, and then we have a revised that reduces the lighting by about 50%. We engaged Steve at Mar Vista Lighting. He has worked in the Montecito area for over 30 years. We told him the comments and we said, please walk us room by room and give us your opinions on the foot candles and how we can reduce it to meet the board's request. So every recommendation we took, we revised, and then he did an updated photometrics of the main house and the pool cabana. So we're hoping that that satisfied your request. Number 5, your comment was provide concrete sample. We have created, we have a physical sample of a stone that shows a level of aggregate and a sandblast finish. So this sample will reflect the level of earthiness, the level of integral stain, so the color payoff, and then the aggregate that we are going to try to achieve for all the concrete walls. Dan, wanted to make a point that this is, of course, a 1x8 sample. These are going to be 24 inches by, at the highest, 16 feet. And we want to create a level of variance and lifts in this to try to mimic that rammed earth look, but using a conventional material like concrete. So we will be doing some mock-ups on site within the next couple of months to get it right before construction commences, because it is very important to us.
Could I add to that?
Sure.
Yeah, the concrete walls are the most important part of the architecture. It's number one feature. So if you could flip to the page that the rendering's on, can you tell me the page number?
A014.
So our original vision was to do rammed earth walls, and just for myriad reasons, it ended up not being feasible. Building code limitations, cost, time related to creating the rammed earth walls. So we don't want to abandon the authenticity and natural materials and quality of rammed earth. So that's why we're doing concrete. We don't want to go to stucco. We don't want to go to an applied finish or a tile or a simulated finish. We want an authentic finish that maintains the naturalness and ruggedness of the rammed earth. So if you could tighten in on that bottom image, you can see that that there's some striations, like some horizontal waviness that if you look at the sample that you have in front of you, it's it's representative of slight variations in tone and slight variations in texture to the material. So we're going to try to achieve this with concrete. And I know that we can. We've researched it. We went down and visited a project by Rios, another architect that we admire in Palm Springs last weekend, and looked at what they did there. I had to get my eyeballs 2 inches from the material to know that it was concrete and not rammed earth. We're going to get there, and it's going to take a process of in-field mock-ups, and once we have a concrete sub on board and attached to the project, experimenting with how we're going to pour this in lifts and what level of sandblasting we're going to do and what's going to be feasible within the project budget. So I'm confident that we're going to get there, but the whole project team and the owners are dedicated to the quality, authenticity, and the earthiness of the material.
And then number 6 through 8, I'll let Chris.
Thanks. Yeah, we did look at, let's see, consider reducing the size of the hardscape pathway blocks. We looked at that in terms of the scale, and the scale of the architecture is we want to make sure that the entry sequence has just enough presence, because that's really the only hard material that we have on the property, and it's about less than 5% of the total site coverage. Everything else is gravel. So we felt just making sure that the stone paving leading up from the motor court to the front door just had enough presence in the landscape, just given mostly its planting surroundings. So yeah, we did keep it the same as you saw last time. And then number 7, differentiate between main and service entry gates. Sheet L 5.00. We did review that, and you'll see the service gate, which is the family gate, is supposed to be an extension of the perimeter fencing. So it looks like just part of the perimeter fencing, as if only the family knows about it. And then the service gate, you'll see L 5.00. Oh,
It was labeled landscape.
yeah, I think,
And bar final landscape.
yeah, oh, there. Yeah. So the top section you can see is the guest experience. And so we've shown that more as a perforated metal gate that's also vertical as well, vertical pickets. But that has more opacity to it, so you can see through into the garden. That would be your guest experience. And then the bottom section at the bottom of the sheet shows the family entrance gate, which is essentially the exact same aesthetic as the perimeter fencing. So it looks as if only the family knows about it when you drive by.
Number 9 was consider adding cement plaster to concrete exterior. I believe Dan explained our reasoning on that. John, let us know if you want us to go into that in more detail. And then the last thing I wanted to touch on was our neighbor, Tom Dunnan. He's the neighbor to the north on Valley Club Road. He expressed concern about our pool equipment, where it was located too close to his primary suite. Chris and I met with Tom a week after that hearing. We were with him and his wife Ellen on site for about an hour. If you go to sheet A801 in the architectural set, our agreement with Tom was if we enclose the equipment with all 4 walls and put a roof over it, he would agree and have no further concerns.
What kind of material on the walls, please?
It is butted up against one of the architectural concrete walls. So it's a 24-inch thick concrete wall with 3 of those walls being wood framed with wood siding to mimic the existing architecture. And then a roof, just a flat roof above that, covered in wood siding as well. So it's inconspicuous. And if you look at the site plan, it looks in the same plane, in the same alignment as the pool cabana. So it just goes away.
Are you done, please?
There was one more, actually. I think the number 8, I don't think we did address that just yet. Yeah, it's restudy parking area adjacent to southwest property line, increase landscaping, reduce hardscape. If you go back to the landscape set, it's sheet L 1.00. So we did address that, and it's in the bottom right-hand corner of the site. So we did reduce the amount of gravel paving on the right-hand side. There's 2 site walls holding up the entry gate. It's the site wall, it's the top site wall, I think previously we had gravel paving extending into the front setback, so we've clipped that back and had studied the parking experience. So we felt like this is the absolute minimum for somebody to drive in without and also backing out without having to do a 3-point turn to get out.
And how's the fire department deal with this?
We are going to fire review for our BNS submittal. It's a requirement to have the FPC certificate. When we had our preliminary review, conceptual review, they would not be pulling into our property. They will be butting their trucks up to our vehicular access, which has that 30-foot setback for them.
200-foot hose length? Really? 200-foot hose length?
Yes,
Yeah.
they typically will go above that when they, it's to their discretion, the 200 feet. And I believe it was Alex who reviewed our preliminary set and he approved it. We have that
Usually
letter.
pull in 100, up to 100 feet
Yeah,
and back
yeah.
out, so. So you could pull into your main garage area and maybe get your
Okay,
200 feet
anything-
from there.
We are done.
You're done. Okay, questions? Rob, please.
I have no questions at the moment, so I'll pass.
We're on for final. So Tip, please.
No questions.
Dave, please.
No questions.
Robert, please.
I'm a bit confused about the fence along the street. The elevations maybe it's just a graphic problem, but just from the standpoint of neighborhood compatibility, I'm having trouble with that fence. I don't know if other board members feel the same way, but what is it really made of and how is it?
Detail of it.
Yeah, do you have a detail of it that's better than that elevation?
Yeah, it's probably just the how far back it's zoomed. Maybe we zoom in for a second. It's
Have a detail?
we don't have a detail of it, but the fence is made up of 2x4 pickets with a 1/2-inch gap spacing.
2x4 steel?
No, 2x4 wood that would weather naturally.
Wood.
Yeah, it would be kind of weather out the silvery color. It's not stained. So there'd be a little warmth is the intention.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, could I add to that?
Yeah.
The if you zoom out so you can see that fence line, the walls that are running east-west, diagonally east-west, parallel to the long walls in the house, are the same concrete material as the house. So those were designed to be part of the house language. And then the perpendicular components that are running more north-south are the picket that Chris is describing. So it's designed in that kind of jig-joggy pattern to make it relate to the house and also provide a greater sense of relief from the street. So we have these significant kind of triangular planting pockets rather than build our fence right on the street or right on the line that we're allowed to build to. We're stepping it back and providing relief for
Just
greater
looks
amounts
so
of plantings.
severe on the elevation. I don't know, I would leave it up to Rob to tell me if the landscaping proposed is gonna soften that, but and that's the only problem I have.
Could we zoom in on that if you go to L5.00, it might be, I think it's probably a graphic on the PDF. Yeah, if you zoom in, it probably will become clear. Maybe one more zoom. Yeah. So yeah, the client, was really concerned just about the privacy off the street, but then also he doesn't want to see the fence either. So that's why we've the backrest of the fence is at the same geometry as the house, which then, to Dan's point, creates more of a planting pocket. There's about a 15-foot planting buffer between the street in that fence, so we can get oak trees on both sides of the fence, taller plant material in front of the fence as well, just to help soften it. But then also provide the privacy as well. We didn't want to have a totally solid fence. So that was the intention for the vertical pickets with a smaller gap between. So you can still see through when you're staring directly at it, but at an angle, it would look opaque.
I don't see any like top rail or column caps or any like architectural detail that,
You want a fence detail?
yeah.
Yeah, you want
No
a,
problem. Yeah, we could do that.
anything else, Robert?
No.
Bill?
Yeah, can you go back to that site plan, the landscape? It looked like you had the AC units in the setback. Is that allowable? I couldn't tell. Was that a generator next to it?
We do not have it is a generator and our condensers are close to the side setback and close to the front setback.
It looked
but
like they're
The only thing that is in the setback is the site walls, which our planner, Miss Spears.
trim into the bottom right corner there. I mean,
What you see is a clearance that is off of those condensers. So the white footprint
Oh.
is showing a clearance, but the actual equipment is within our property.
okay.
And then the only thing that is in that setback is a site wall. That's about 42 inches high.
Got it. And the generator, how tall is that wall? That is the foot? No.
The generator is sunken down by about 18 inches.
Okay.
So you should be able to see the generator itself.
No, we've sunken it down to avoid seeing it.
236 to 237.
Yeah, so it's 1.5 feet down.
18 inches.
Yeah.
And then the wall directly to the north of it's at 244.5. I think it's
What's the,
roughly
how
about.
far is the neighbor's property? I mean, there's the property line I see, but is there a sound issue there, you think, with the neighbor and the generator? I know it's not running all the time, but.
There's currently no neighbor to our south. It is, vacated land. There's no build on it. And there is a trail easement that is right on that south property line as well. And then as we are working with a sound technician to make sure the decibels are heading below that threshold. I think it's 30 decibels.
And then I didn't see a chimney cap detail. Of all the details you did, they look pretty good. I just couldn't find a chimney cap. Did you have one?
That is not included in our set at this time.
It's not, okay.
Is it in a wall section or a section?
It may be in a wall
Yeah, I
section.
looked, I couldn't see that either. Anyway, okay, that was it. Thanks.
Okay, Rob, you want to go back?
We go back to the, or maybe we're there, the landscape plan with the trees, the tree plan. You folks, the landscape arch, you guys do really nice work. And, but what I'm just trying to understand is a lot of times when I see tree layouts, you'll see kind of the trees are kind of grouped, and kind of an informal where you kind of cluster a couple and then you'll have some drift away and all that. Or you'll have a much across the board, you'll have a very grove formal layout. This kind of is neither. And so the trees just seem like they're just random. What's the thinking, I guess, is my question.
That's a great question. Yeah, we oftentimes are really looking at the end result height and width of the tree. So, I mean, as you know, live oaks will get quite wide and tall. And so we're planning for the future is the intention rather than grouping them super tight. And then in the end, like down the road, maybe 5 or 10 years, they start having to prune them away. The trees are breaking apart from one another. So we've tried to space them in a way just to plan for the future.
So then why not lose a one or two and then have a really big one? Or have like less with some really big ones then, or?
There are pretty sizable trees from 72-inch to 84-inch boxes on the property too. So in addition to that, it's also the most multi-generational approach. So we've tried to have a few that are a little smaller that might be, 10 to 12, some that are 15 to 18, some that are upwards to 20 feet tall day one, but also there's the privacy component too for the owner that we're trying to achieve too, and just making sure that the building's not seen from the street. So we've tried to study that and model in a way to give us the right rhythm, but also the right distance between each tree.
And I don't think I have any questions at this time. I have comments, but not questions. So public comment. Is there anybody here that would like to address the board on item number 5? We don't have a street address assigned, so it's 0 Valley Club Road, please.
No requests.
Okay, so we are on for final today. My particular assessment is that there are some holes here. So let's go back and see what the board thinks. Rob, please. On for final.
Yeah, I'd make a motion for final approval with all those kind of loose ends to come back to consent.
Well, that, if it's still coming back to consent, then it's referring to consent. It's not giving them an approval.
Okay, so you had some issues with some details that you wanted to see or so?
Yeah, you'll hear it when so you don't think it's completely ready yet? Is that what I'm hearing?
Well, the landscape I thought was fine, but you were referencing some architectural components?
Tip, comments, please?
Yes, I like the building, I like the architecture, but I think that definitely can come back on, for final on consent.
For a few minor issues?
You might add a missing detail, the fencing and,
Okay. Dave, please.
Yeah, I think it's a really nice project and confident that the few details are missing. I wouldn't worry about them with the exception of the fence on the front. That's the one that I really would want to come back to review.
Robert.
I would concur with the rest of the board that it's a beautiful project and I like the concrete sample a lot. And yeah, just a few missing details and come back on consent.
Bill.
Yeah, I agree with the other board members. I like the architectural style. I think the landscaping is well done. I think return for final on consent with additional details.
So the things that I believe would greatly enhance this project, the pool equipment has wood walls on it. If you really want to kill that sound, it's got to be a CMU or port in place. It's got to be thick. So that's number one. Would you be willing to do that as opposed to wood?
I think we'd be willing to meet a certain sound standard. I think the sound transmission is more important than the materiality. So if it'd be all right with you, we'll study the transmission level of whatever wall assembly
It's,
that we choose so that we can
65
make
is
sure that it's
65 is what's legal, but it sounds like the representation your office made to the neighbor is a lot lower. I wasn't there. I have no idea. And the way to really lock that puppy in is CMU or port in place.
Yeah, I think I'd prefer that we have the flexibility to do a wall construction that's we can make sure is cost effective and that our builder feels is going to work and our structural engineer. So
Fire department, I am extremely leery to give an approval until I see a stamp. That looks like a long hose pull. And, you get the fire department down on the lower right, and then the fire kind of spreads out over to the other side, so they have to move the truck. No, they're not moving the truck. So it's surprising me that they just kind of sign off on it. I'm happy to have them sign off on it. That's their job, not mine, but I'd love to see a plan with their stamp on it at final, okay?
Hello, sorry
Ben,
to
Steve-
interrupt. This is Olivia, the planner for the project.
Yeah.
I do have a site plan that's stamped by Alex with Montecito Fire, and that was a site plan from the last preliminary set, but I don't think there have been major changes.
Okay, very good. So let's just get that included.
So
Will
there
do.
is,
Thank you.
Thank you, Willow.
when you brought that up, there is the aspect with tree location in terms of the defensible space and then those distances. Did you folks deal with that?
Yeah, the trees that are shown on the plan that we're looking at, the one that I think Olivia was referring to are nearly the same.
Oh, is Olivia?
Yeah.
Oh, I'm sorry. I called you Willow. I'm sorry. Okay. The fence detail, I think we've been over that to get that drawn. And then you've changed up the lighting plan, so that has not been reviewed at all. So review of that prior to granting final, and a chimney cap. So those are the issues that I think need to be reviewed at the next meeting. Everything else sounds like it's okay with everybody? Yeah. Okay, so can I make a motion to continue with those items to be reviewed at the next consent calendar 2 weeks from now?
2 weeks gonna work for you? Yep.
Yeah, okay, so I'd like to move for a continuance with the applicant to study the wall at the pool equipment to ensure privacy, audio privacy to the neighbor to the north, that they provide a stamped fire department site plan. Sounds like you have it, but just have it. A fence detail, lighting that meets the board's approval, and I will chat with people as necessary for that, and a chimney cap detail. Is there a second, please?
I'll second that.
You want to say anything, Dan? Okay. Any further discussion? All those in favor? Aye. All those opposed? Motion for adjournment, anybody?
I'll move to adjourn today's meeting of March 21st, 2024.
Thanks, everybody.
Second.
Second, okay, all those in favor? Aye. Aye. So we're done.